gentlemen, and welcome to this seminar on family business. On behalf of the Indian Merchants Chamber, I extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Pranav Satya on my right here, the partner and national leader, International Tax and Transaction Services, Ernst & Young India. He has been instrumental in curating and putting this whole event together, where only the participants are only, I think, promoters and family business owners. I welcome Mr. Pranav Mahajani, President, Troika. Is he here? He's yet to come. Okay. Dr. B.K. Varsaraj, who is here, Principal Partner, Varsaraj and Company. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Ms. Ummihani Khorakiwala, Executive Director, Nandi Seeds Private Limited. Where is she? Oh, there. Mr. K.T. Chandy, Partner and Private Tax Co-Leader, ENY India. He's from Bangalore. He's coming, okay. Mr. Gautami Gavankar, CEO, Estate Planning and Trusteeship, Kotak Mahindra Trusteeship Services Limited. No, yet to come, okay. Mrs. Sweta Shah, Head, Wealth Structuring and Tax, Edelweiss Global Wealth Management. She also will join us. Mrs. Sonali Pradhan, Head of Wealth Planning India, Julius Baer. And Mrs. Priti Radhi Gupta, she's here. Yes, I met her. Yeah, there you are. Thank you. Founder, LXME and Managing Director, Anand Rathi Share and Stock Brokers Limited. And all of us, you present here this afternoon. I'm extremely thankful to Edelweiss here for sponsoring this entire event this afternoon. And I'm extremely grateful for their support. As we all know, family businesses are a dominant part of the entire economic activity that takes place in most of the countries. Family businesses are, they cover about 85–90% of the entire economic activity of all countries, as a matter of fact. So I think the issues and the challenges and the opportunities that one faces in family businesses, big, small, or startups or what have you, are different at different stages of family. The whole journey of a family business, when somebody starts a business, the challenges are different. When the business grows, the challenges are different. And when the business comes to a point where it needs to be succeeded, the challenges are very different. So the entire issues of family businesses and family owners are, and each family, in my opinion, each family challenges are unique. There are no similarities with different families, as you will see, that all have their own different challenges and their own different, and the solutions are also very unique. The chemistries of families, large, small, they are all very different. So all these make up for, and how they interface with business, governance, and family, I think these are issues that is been discussed, debated in all kinds of institutions that are there in family businesses. The issues that are on one's mind is, when we see family businesses, what are the aspirations of the next generation? The next generation, or the coming generation, as we all know, is, and all generations we all know, that were different from the previous generation. So the aspirations of the next generation has to be taken into account when we are looking at business governance and family businesses. The issues arise whether you depend on a will to transfer businesses or whether you do it in your own lifetime. These are again issues that I think each family needs to consider when we are looking at succession planning and stuff like this. The issue also that comes in family businesses is whether it's a family first or business first. See, you come to, in the whole journey of family governance, the issues that come to your mind, that when conflicts take place or resolutions have to be made, in your mind, what do you put first, the family first or a business first? And this is a very tricky situation, I think, which all family business owners, first generation or second generation or third generation face. And we all know that by the time it reaches the third generation, the family sort of divides and moves on. But what I have seen when I attended was a part of a delegation of CII couple of years ago in Japan, the family business have a tendency to move on from generation to generation to generation. They don't sort of, that pattern doesn't seem to appear in Japan. And when we try to understand why Japan is a little unique in that sense, is that the owner of that business, whoever is the owner of the business, he or she decides that this sibling or that sibling will run the business and the rest will not run the business. He takes a call, and that call has to be adhered to. The rest of them are sort of paid off or compensated or whatever you may call it, and whoever he has decided runs the business, so the business carries on from generation to generation. And we went to some companies over there and we realized that this is how it works. And they are large companies, mind you. They are not, they are billion dollar companies who are family owned businesses. And we see that in Germany as well. Middle-sized companies are all a couple of $1 billion, and they are all family owned and family run. So how they manage their succession planning, all this is quite interesting and challenging. The other issue that always comes in family businesses is how do you manage professionals? You have family members who are highly educated, highly competent, and then they are professionals who ultimately run the business. So how does family owners strike a balance between the aspirations of a family owner and the professionals who actually run day-to-day aspects of the business? So all these issues, when you combine all these issues into a thing, then we have a lot of things to talk about. So I will not take the wind out of their sails. We have experts here around the table. So I'll request, with these few words, I'll request Mr. Pranav Saita to take over. Thank you.
It indeed gives me great pleasure to immense pleasure to welcome you all this afternoon. I must say that Mr. Khorakiwala's foresight to organize this event really impressed me, because it's an absolutely opportune time. And in India, particularly when entrepreneurship is taking such a huge front stage, I think his very initiative to think of an event like this for Indian family businesses is indeed very welcome. We have today a good lineup of panelists and speakers and excellent topics, hopefully, which will resonate with some of you here. The first speaker for the day is Dr. Vatsraj, who is a third-generation chartered accountant in practice for almost 3 decades. And he's an academician as well, attached to various family-managed businesses, and therefore is a good blend, excellent blend of both practical experience in his practice as well as as an academician teaching and providing insights to various family business next generation on their family businesses. He has successfully advised and mentored various business families in commercially restructuring ahead, but also in succession planning and creating practices of smooth transition to the generation next. He is the principal partner of Vatsraj & Company, a very old firm established way back in 1934 by his own grandfather. So he is himself, in that sense, the third generation professional running his firm. The firm has 5 verticals: audit, tax, assurance, indirect tax, and business advisory, all headed by competent partners. He was the deputy director of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's S.P. Jain Institute of Management and Research of their family management program, and thereafter is now an adjunct faculty at S.P. Jain School of Global Management, based out of Singapore, Dubai, Australia and Mumbai. Apart from his illustrious CV, I must say he is a very, very dear friend and an excellent speaker. So we look forward to hearing him this afternoon. Over to Dr. Vatsraj.
Yeah, being a professor, when we get to talk, we don't want to give up the mic easily. And the other part which he knows very well, that nobody listens to me at home. So when I get a chance to speak in front of a captive audience, I lose myself totally. I also thank Pranav Bhai. See, he's a very dear friend and intelligent person. What he did was that he allowed me to open the innings. And do you know why? Because he knew that most of us come here after a working or a sumptuous lunch. So we are little, not in that exact fresh state of mind. And he wanted to be heard very strongly. So he said, you do a time pass. That's number one. So he wanted me to face the new ball, leather ball, and I face all the balls. And then when the shine goes off, then he can easily play he wanted to. Well, anyway, that's a different issue. And now, and he knows that because of my association with Family Managed Business Program for more than 20 years now. At SP Jain, our dean had founded this program. It was the first of its kind to be founded, and everybody else has followed up on that. And what Pranav Bhai said, what Mr. Khorakiwala also said, that the programs, I mean, by the time the family businesses go to the third generation, there is a problem. I mean, they say that the third generation ke baad the business is actually, is scattered off and it doesn't work and things don't happen. Now, we don't agree to this, and not agreeing to this is that we have found out the reason that does it happen? Yes. And we realize it happens. And what we wanted to do, the research that we did was that why does it happen? Why does it happen? And especially in India and Asia and Japan, that he said, it's very right what he said, is that it doesn't happen because big businesses go on and on. And we have also done a research on the Japanese companies there, and what they do is that the head of the business, the owner of the business, is given a mandate, and that is written in what is known as a family constitution. I'll be talking about the family constitution, so I'll come to it. But then the whole idea is that he will say, and every member of the family will agree, when the time goes on, the family grows, it gets divided, it becomes bigger and bigger, and there is a written law, though a family constitution is not a legal document, but once the family adopts it, then internally, whatever they sign and do, it's like a memorandum of understanding between them. And there in Japan, what they do is that the person who has the merit is appointed, and everybody, you may be the owner of the business by virtue of being a family member, all the rights and all the decisions compulsorily have to go to that person who's heading the next generation guy, and then they form what is also known as a board of trustees who advises them. They meet regularly, and one of the biggest reasons why we also arrived at is that why this third generation success doesn't happen, doesn't grow, is because of the fact that there is no family rule, regulations, constitution, or what we call as a memorandum of association or like articles of association, and that is exactly what is to be done. And therefore the topic is family governance. See, it does not say family business governance, it says family governance. Why? Because you have to see to it that how do you govern a family, and it is mainly for, and what again we say is that it is mainly to help in the initial stages and until the second generation, the CEO of the family. Now, who is the CEO?
The patriarch.
No, the CEO is the lady of the house. She is the chief emotional officer, I call her. See, because what happens is, if you realize, that lady of the house is generally torn between issues between the husband and her sons. And she doesn't know what to do. And what happens is that what Khorakiwala said is so right, that in family managed businesses, see, please excuse me, because I will possibly go down to the level of being a professor. So something that I say might be too simple for you, but excuse me for it. And if you have a grudge against me, this guy is responsible for calling me here. Anyway, so what happens is that the CEO, there is always a conflict between the father would say something, and if there is something wrong, the son will not complain to the father. He'll complain to the mother. The husband will complain to the mother. And the mother, poor thing, or the lady is torn between, now whose side do I take? And what happens is that family managed businesses do not suffer because of business problems. They suffer because of these family problems and family issues. And therefore what happens is that there is a need of family governance. There is a need to keep that CEO of the family in good. And then what happens is, as the family grows, the number of CEOs grow. The daughter-in-law comes in. Another interesting aspect that comes in. And then she has something else to say. Then if the daughter is there in the family, the son-in-law comes in. And it's great thing. So what happens is that what we have seen and what we have done is that firstly, there needs to be, if you have to grow. And again, the problem is, you know what, that the head of the family, in our India, we call them Babuji, Babu. The big man, old man, who has started the business. And what he says is right. So if somebody tells him, Babuji, हम लोग ये जो कर रहे हैं, what we are doing, can we not document it? Can we not put it on records so that for the future we can know? So he'll say no. So the reactions start from there, you know. And generally what happens is, again, before I get into my slides, the third generation, what happens? The first generation is there, the father. His son gets into the business with him and supports him, so they are working together closely. The third generation, the son, the grandfather and the father feel he should go to Babson's College, Boston, and get a degree on entrepreneurship. Now, the business is to be done here in India. The conditions that are different, it's good, you go there, you send him to Babson. Because we have got examples of people who have done their masters, or they have done these courses in Babson and the US and the Boston, coming back here, but they are lost in the family business. And then whatever they have learned on the dining table, they tell their mother, Dad doesn't know anything. This is not the way it is to be done. This is a different way to do. There arises a problem. And then when he gets into the business, he's given a cabin, he's given a chamber. And whenever he wants to do something and give his plan, either his father stops him or his grandfather stops him. We'll tell you, we'll call you. And what happens is that this third generation is generally, I'm sorry to say that, but over and ignored. There is no communication between the first, second, and the third generation. And then the third generation is naturally, has got more money, has got more time to spend, because the micromanaging is done. I'm using the word micromanaging is being done by the first generation guys and the second generation guys, and they don't want to give away the control to the third generation. You don't want him to learn to be responsible and to debit his mistakes in an experience account. So he has nothing to do. So he loses technically interest in the business. He's just wanting to have fun. And there are so many case studies and instances that we have faced. If I do have the time, I might say it, but I would now move on to this. And now therefore I come to this family constitution, that why does a family need to be governed? I change the slide? Yeah. Now, see how it starts, the thought process. Who needs it? We know each other well enough. This is the patriarch saying, the big man saying. We can sit down and work things out when they come up. My family knows where they stand and what to expect. I make the rules, why put things in right? There is, and we have seen in my practical, also when I'm advising families, I advised a family from Goa, they were 3 brothers. And those 3 brothers had 4 sons. And I was invited by the 4 sons telling me, because they did a program in our college, saying, sir, tell our dads to listen to us. So I said, they will not let me into their business. They will not come and talk to me. So he's saying, sir, you have to do something. I said, you want them to do? Yeah. Tell them our sir is there and he has thought up of a novel idea of how to save tax. So the moment you tell your seniors that how do you save tax and how to reconstitute the family or what to do, they will invite. And the moment they said, they invited me. I told the 4 younger guys, keep out. Don't, and I will talk against you. First, let us have the confidence of the seniors, because they have put in the trouble, they have worked hard, they have brought the firm and the business to this level, so you cannot ignore them. They have huge amount of experience. But you need to tell them how to see things differently. And therefore, the next, while majority of the famous business owners would like to see their businesses transfer to the next generation, it is estimated that 70% do not survive the second or the third generation, and 90% don't even make it beyond this. Unfortunately, this is a fact. And what we are doing is that we are trying, and in the program that we are doing in our college, I am not selling my college to you, but in the program, I am very proud of the program that we try to bring these things out and make the, and you know what do we do? When before the student is admitted, we call the mentor, the owner of the family and the student, and one day before the interview, we tell them stay together in the room and share thoughts and views. And when the mentor and the next generation guys are together for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours together, they speak about their business, they communicate. And they communicate, and when they come and meet us the next day for the interview, they say, the father says, or the grandfather says, or the child, saying so much about my business I had not told them, and so much about him I did not know. In this 8, 10 hours of what we stayed together here before the interview has been a great learning experience for us. And this 8, 10 hours is going to change the direction about how I get my word into the business, which is excellent that what we do. The next slide, please. No rocket science, no rocket technology. This is all what we have tried to do. Is that why? What is the problem? What are the problems? That we have tried to identify the problem. Because if you identify the problem, then you can, or the doctor can go and treat the problem. So the problems are poor training, no communication. Lack of common vision or focus on long-term strategy. Everybody is interested that what is happening today. Today income tax mein kya ho gaya? Tomorrow what do I do? How do I do? But what is the long term? Parent does not hand over de facto control. Does everything, doing everything yourself and being caught up on immediate problems and issues. Business is gifted versus earned. We firmly believe. Should you gift your business to your children? Should you gift them the shares? Or find a guy on merit, give them employment, give them their salaries, and tell them to buy into the business gradually. Because anything that is bought and paid for by them from their own money has a value. What you get something as a gift, and they say, मुझे ही मिलेगा ना ये तो मेरा ही है ना सब. There is that sense of strong entitlement which is actually kills the passion in them to work. Maybe. This is what we have seen. But if they buy into the business, they pay for the business, then they know the value. And every time there's a valuation attached to it. You want more share in the business? You want it? Okay, take it, and eventually what the father has, he can gift it to the children. Though again, there we advise, as long as the wife is alive, gift only to the wife, nothing to the children. Anyway, so going further, conflict among succeeding generations. This is a big thing. As the family business grows, the family grows faster. And what Mr. Korakiwala said, that the issues come that we have at a time come to a situation where we have to take a decision that business comes first or family comes first. See, whatever you do, sir, the family will definitely come first. I mean, by default. And what will happen in my next slide, I'm covering it, the business will become a bystander, just watching what is wrong and happening. The business will have nothing to do, nothing to say, because it will be overrun by the family problems and family issues. So, but if you are able to achieve this, but if you are able to do something about this, find a solution to this, then everything is laid out. Then nobody will, and all these issues, the family governance issues, actually then give rise to what we call as the family constitution. And what is the constitution? We'll come up. Pranav bhai, we started 20 minutes late. So I have another 15-20 minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
We'll count from the time you started.
Yeah, and suppose if
until we unload you completely.
The next one. Most critical issues, family-based issues faced today are family-based issues rather than business-based issues. Conflicting goals and values, conflicting personalities, what Mr. Khorakiwala also mentioned. Conflicting expectation, conflicting worth ethics. Conflict is a guarantee. Conflict is a guarantee. The business often becomes a bystander and a hostage. Nothing can be done unless you control those issues, until you govern the family, until you make put the family follow a discipline which is only for the benefit and to survive and to grow ahead with the business as a growing business, who can't work out. All these things are therefore leading to what I am saying is that why a family constitution is needed. From governance of the family, I am saying this, see, most of the thing which I will say extempore would be captured on my slides later on. The next one, please. Now, what is to be done? Active business meetings and family council meetings which importantly include independent mentors developing a set of family business rules. Informality works in many situations, but the family grows, business becomes more complicated, disagreements take place, and what we have seen is old wounds resurface. Something that has happened 10-15 years ago, some problem between the cousins or the father and the mother and the family, they surface and they take center stage. Rather than what about business, let's move ahead. I know of something when there was a division done, one of the ladies of the family and her husband said, no, I don't do this. Why? Because we had demanded a particular ring when the division of the jewelry was done of our grandmother. And in spite of making a demand, the ring was rightfully ours. It was given to my cousins. Now the ring was costing peanuts as compared to the entire family jewelry, what they got. But that particular issue became an ego issue. And please understand, the family split. Because he said, give me the ring or I will not agree to this. And the other lady said, I will not give you the ring. He said, okay, make a similar ring like that. No, you make it. I want that same ring. See, small issues, case studies, when we come across, it comes to this situation. Now, family constitution functions as an insurance policy against future problems. That is what we say. You know, I know, we are not going to die tomorrow. We know that we may not fall ill and may not need hospitalization, but yet we have a medical policy, insurance policy. Yet insure lives. So, similarly, you need to have a family constitution. If everything is going your way, fine. But you need to have insurance that something goes wrong, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And that is why we say that family constitution, like the way in which we say a will is essential for every person, a family constitution is essential for every person. And what it ensures is, it ensures orderly succession, including retirement. Now the top guys at the line need to think of retirement. What generally they think, why should I retire? I will die on my saddle only. I will retire when I die. But is that right? Is that what you want to do? I mean, is that all the life is that business, business, business? Now, sometimes when I'm talking, I know that the ladies, we have a program called Women's Management Program. And sometimes, you know what, I get a lot of applauses from the women. And then they come and tell me, tell my husband that. Oh, I wish I can tell him. Then I tell them, madam, even I am a husband, so we think alike. So let's leave it at that. So then provides clear, explicit and objective criteria for decision making, establishes mechanism to resolve conflicts and disagreements. This is all what eventually you have to do. You have to have a constitution, a family business constitution, so that what happens is that your future is smooth and is secure. The next one. I mean, I don't need to repeat, it's all self-explanatory. This is by Professor John L. Ward, Center of Family Enterprises, Kellogg School of Management. I've quoted him because he said so, but this is what we also believe. What what I have taken is this: the future harmony of your family and continuity of your business may well depend upon taking the trouble to actually drawing up a formal family constitution. And I'm adding to that last word, a constitution is a tool to preserve a family's legacy and wealth. And wealth. See, sometimes we come across that after the conflicts in the family, what happens is, it's so sad to see that happen. The third generation or the fourth generation guys, they say, kya karne ka hai? We don't want to work. We have so much of property, we have so much of land, sell it, we'll live easily. So at the cost of killing the business, they want to sell off the assets, they want to hive off the business to earn money, and then they say we'll retire. And one new concept that is coming out now, which I've said is, again, Khorakiwala sir rightly pointed it in one of the sentences he says is, that new generation, new aspirations. And what we have now seen is that the younger generation, they don't want to continue the family business. No, we don't want to be here. We give us money, we want to have a start, we want to have a setup start of business, but the fact is that 4 or 5 years into experimenting, and I'm sorry to say majority of them fail, then they eventually come back to the family business. And this is, I'm talking about statistics, and actually this has happened. We have seen cases like that. But the fact is that if you try stopping them, they will not listen to you. So let them do what they want. Let them debit all what they do into an experience account. And once they have that enriched experience account, then they'll come back and listen to the father. And again, interestingly, I shouldn't be saying this. Some of you in the room, excuse me. And that's what I was telling Mr. Khorakiwala when his daughter came in. The interesting part that is happening now is that the daughters are taking a big lead and continuing the family business rather than the sons. We have a very illustrious family where out of 3 brothers, it was in the public eyes, it was in the open. The 2 sons, the patriarch said that no, I don't think that they are capable of leading the family business. I don't think I should name the family here, but the daughter of the family was given the right, and today she is running the business extremely well, and he gave time to his sons also. He said 2 years, 3 years, every person will, each of my son, and they will think, and we'll see who has done well. And when the daughter took over the business, she has done so well that there is no looking behind. And the fact is that they say that the daughter listens to the father more. She also dictates to the father. I just saw an example of that few minutes ago in the room, the way she came and she spoke to her dad, but that's a different thing. But it's okay, I mean, that's the love, affection, respect between them. Anyway, so a constitution is a tool to preserve a family's legacy. The next one, please. Now, what is the role of a family constitution? I've tried to, because the topic was given to me, I said let me give it to the details of that. Communicate the will of the family and expectation from future generations. Madam, you need not take the pictures, because I have been ordered by enough that your slides will not be your property once the lecture is over. So he says that I will distribute it to you guys. So, and what he says is, and the problem again is that he's more dear a friend of my wife than me. So I have to be careful of him. You know, and it is vice versa. I mean, I'm more as friendly to his wife. So if I have to use again something against him, is Avni Babu whom I talk to. Sorry, Pranav bhai. It documents the mission, values, philosophy and principles that govern the family and the business, including the struggles of the past generation. This is very important. The third generation doesn't know of the struggles of the older generations, but they need to be told. And the moment, you know, they say, I tell my son something, he's saying, you were unlucky, dad. You had problems, you had financial issues, that was your naseeb, your problem. Hamara to nahi hai na abhi. But tell them, no, fine. But at least you should know that this could happen. You should know that this could happen in the business or because of a family problem or a family issue. Outline the business strategy and its long and short-term goals. Define rights and obligations of participants, the role, composition and powers of key governing and other constituencies of the business, including key management, directors, shareholders, etc. Maintain a foundation of trust and faith and defines dispute, serves to define dispute resolution, process to deal with conflicts. If there is a dispute, how do we resolve it? What are the ways? And there are enough things, though Mr. Khorakiwala said that all families have a different problem, differently there it is. But sir, some of the problems are common. You know, the common, we have experienced that one of the reasons why there was a problem in the family because the younger son got married and came, and he wanted to buy a BMW car because his wife wanted one. And the father said, no, we are driving a Honda. Your older brother is driving a car, why do you want that? And then what happened, few days later there was BMW car in the family bungalow, saying, where did this car come from? No, my father-in-law gifted it to me. Problem. See, these are the issues, and there are so many issues that the moment a younger son becomes 18, 19, 20, he wants a BMW or he wants a Mercedes of a particular type. But if all those things are laid down, that this is what you do, and if you want to have a BMW, understand you have to buy it. You have to pay for it. And if you can afford it, take it. This is what for preserving the long-term strength of the business and for the longevity of the business. Put it all down. We have one family where it is said that you may buy a car which does not cost in excess of 30 lakhs of rupees. Now you buy whatever you want. And if you buy something in excess to that, it is a loan which is given to you, which will be deducted every month from the drawings that you make. Clear rules. And the moment you tell them it is not your entitlement, things fall in place. So, guide the distribution of resources. That is what I was trying to say. And therefore, the family constitution should be regularly reviewed and updated to ensure it remains relevant and reflects changes that the times and circumstances necessitate. Like I said, they said that not more than of a value of 30 lakhs. Now today if you go to buy a Fortuner, it is 45 lakhs. So the times have changed. So those limits need to be expanded. Or whatever has to be done needs to be changed. So the constitution is not something that once you form it, it's there forever. No. As a family, you need to review it. The mentors and the people guiding you should review it. And if there are some changes to be enforced in the constitution, please enforce them. No, the next one. It is typically a formal written down document or set of documents that is reviewed, acknowledged and signed by all family members, ideally even those not involved in the business. While it may or may not be legally binding, it is not legally binding, but it creates a moral obligation among the family members. Being morally bound in this manner signifies the commitment of each family member to the business. Then what are the mission and the purpose? Values and standards, central values of the family, ownership, inheritance, succession, responsibility of the members, and support for personal development. Family council operating procedures, lot of things change because marriage and divorce, premarital nuptial agreements, employment policy, compensation policy, shareholders agreement, and estate planning. We also had one case wherein somebody came up to say that the person died, and she says that he had married me also. I have 2 children from him. And DNA result and everything proved. Now what do you handle, how do you handle such situation? We come across interesting cases and interesting things where we realize that if, so sometimes there is, a son has died. So how do you deal with the widow and the children? Sometimes there is a child who is not born out of legal marriage, but the child and the wife comes in, or the lady comes and claims it. So how do you deal with them? And if they go to the law may support them also. So these are all kind of complex issues that gather, which have to be thought of and taken care of. Next one, please. This is typically how it happens. You have the ownership, the shareholders meeting, then top management, the business board of directors, family council and family assembly, and where the circles meet each other are all interactions takes place. And this circle becomes the most potent circle because it's a mix and a view of every aspect of the family business which a family business needs. So looking at this also becomes important, and it is not just one time. There has to be a continuous governance. There has to be a continuous mentoring, meeting, communication, not just for the business meetings, but also for the family governance meeting, to see to it that, and you can always, one can always see a problem cropping up in future. So before it crops up, see to it that you have a solution for it and adjust to it. And the last slide, please. Now, family governance. In a family managed business, the family, the ownership group all need governance. Effective governance, whether formal or informal, produces the following outcomes: generates a sense of direction, values to live by or work by, and well understood and accepted policies that tell the organization members or family members, therefore, how they should behave, I would not use the word, or rather how they should not maybe also misbehave. Brings right people together at the right time to discuss the right important things. And good governance requires clarity on roles, rights and responsibilities for the family and non-family members, a part of the business, encouraging the family members and business employees to act responsibly, regulating appropriate family and non-family inclusion in the business. It is obvious that a strong and a robust family constitution will enable more effective family governance, ensuring longevity of the business and wealth of the business. This is what the family governance is needed for, to be achieved through a family constitution. And I hope I have done justice to the topic given to in that time limit provided to me. And the last slide, please. So poor governance leads to exclusion and secrecy, both between family members and by members from non-family business participants. Divide and conquer mentality, things start like this. Divide and conquer policies, it creates groups on sides, factions which work each against each other rather for the business. Then bribery and nepotism, etc. Hiring relatives who do not deserve the role. But because he is related to me, my brother-in-law, blah, 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 it goes in like that. And effective governance may not eliminate tensions or issues, but reduces the impact of such instances and improves the effectiveness and harmony of the family enterprise by clarifying family business ownership needs and managing the conversations needed to agree on goals and values and policies. I think that is my end of the show. The next slide. Thank you. I hope.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vatsraj. That we had, as they say, entry into a family business. Entry into a family is God's given gift, I guess. But entry into the family business should not be regarded as an entitlement, but has to be both deserved and earned. He's covered that so beautifully in the short 30 minutes. The key advantages of a family constitution, the importance of putting the governance framework in place, ensuring that all the different possible scenarios are dealt with in the family constitution and how things would unfold, how the family will deal with it if those scenarios unfold. So thank you so much for it. We have a little time. If someone wants to ask any questions, maybe, yes, please.
Once there is a family constitution which is put in place, which is agreed to by all the family members, and then as an outflow of it, whatever agreements that the family makes the family members agree to the constitution could be made legally binding.
So the family constitution per se is not legally binding.
It is not a requirement of law.
No, let's not say requirement of law. What I'm saying is that suppose we made a family constitution and say the constitution says that a person needs to retire at 65. That gentleman says that is written in the constitution, but I don't want to retire at 65. And these are practical cases that happen in reality. The family constitution can reduce issues but does not ensure.
That's what I said in the last slide.
So in such a situation, is it enforceable? So
you have to then get a flavor of a legal flavor to it, somehow or the other through lawyers and solicitors, and then say to it that you have signed this. The person who is reaching the age of 65, or when you find this constitution, sign it and then maybe try to legally enforce it. But like what I said, there is no guarantee as such on that, but I think others would be able to throw more light on it.
So maybe I can supplement what Raju is probably trying to say. Sorry, he's
That's
a dear
okay.
friend, so I call him Raju, but Dr. Vatsraj is trying to say is, it's a choice of the persons who are signatories to that family constitution, as I understand. There is no requirement to have a family constitution. Even if you have one, there is no requirement to make it legally enforceable or binding. It could be providing merely a guidance to the family members. So one, you may or may not have it. If you choose to have it, it could be providing mere guidance. But if you want to make it enforceable, I would feel yes, it can be made enforceable amongst the members or the members of the family or the signatories of that family constitution against one another. So it would be more of that type, where against one another there could be prescriptions that this is what has to be done, and if it is not done, these would be the consequences. As such, therefore, if the consequences are prescribed, those are rights and obligations which different signatories who are adults competent to sign are obliging themselves to, binding themselves to. To that extent, certainly it could be binding on the various signatories to that family constitution. So if all the adult members of the family have signed it, each one of them would knowingly bind themselves to certain things. I can't bind myself to something illegal, but anything that is legally permissible, I can contractually bind myself to. And to that extent, I become bound by what I have signed to, and the other can enforce it on me. So to that extent, I think it can be made enforceable if you choose to make it enforceable. For those who are still not adults or even unborn, normally what we do is have a deed of adherence. So once they become adults, or if they are born and thereafter achieve the age of 18, if they want certain privileges which the family constitution and the family inheritance offers, they have to sign a deed of adherence. So they are not bound per se, but if they sign the deed of adherence, it is then that they get the privileges which go with the family constitution, but they are then, by signing the deed of adherence, also binding themselves to certain things which were contained there, that family members will adhere to certain things. So that's how typically I think it is done. I don't know whether it's a simple or a complex answer, but I have tried my best.
Thanks to both of you all, it's quite clear. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Pramod Shah, I'm Worldwide Chairman of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. So this regarding, sir, your comments on the joint family. So nowadays the joint family is breaking, so, and there is a nuclear families are establishing. So what's your observations, whether this constitution and all this could help or not? Number two, sir, in case of family, we have seen in various big houses, there is a split, and there is a question of ego. Your comments on that, sir?
Yeah, what I said is that what you're saying is that if there is a nuclear family and they are not part of the joint family, if they choose to remain nuclear, then they getting involved in the family business or all that doesn't arise. Because like what Pranav Bhai said, that they are opting out of it. Correct? And I said that yes, ego, because I said that a majority of the problems are not business related problems, but they are family related problems which are caused by egos only. My one ring which the two ladies wanted to fight for, the value, they had inherited jewellery worth crores of rupees, but a 15-20 lakh rupees ring, which is hardly less than 10% of the value of what they inherited, they were still fighting for it, because they say both of us have emotional values to it. So let's be egos. So like what he said, that if the person refuses to sign at the end of the day, what can you do? Personal conflict.
Raj, really appreciate your time, inputs and insights.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
On women in business, succession, inheritance and governance. And we have two of the finest businesswomen, so to say, who have joined us this afternoon. One is, of course, our dear Umi Hani Khorakiwala. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Sorry for that. She has been associated with Biostat Group for several years. She is presently the executive director of Nandi Seeds Private Limited, a Biostat Group company. She is also a director in the Biostat Group. NSPL Nandi Seeds specializes in the business of hybrid seeds with an aim to provide farmers with high quality hybrid seeds for various crops through superior genetics innovation to overcome climate change for sustainable agriculture, and is one of the fastest growing seed companies in the business today. In the beginning of her career, she specialized in sales at Neo Concept, a design firm in New York, where she worked with top global brands. Her retail experience strengthened when she returned to India way back in 2004. And there was a time when she also was into mass retail business, mainly in apparels, and later she took up the family responsibility of running and managing Akbar Ali's, the 150-year-old family-owned departmental store. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Managerial Economics from Carnegie Mellon University and a Master's in Textiles, Marketing and Engineering from the Fashion Institute of Technology, New York. She is also a mother of 2 boys, and while she lives in Mumbai, I think her heart is in Tuscany, right? Okay. So the other panelist this afternoon is Mrs. Preeti Rathi Gupta. She is the founder of Lakshmi, a social fintech focused on women, managing director and promoter also at Anand Rathi Shares and Stockbrokers Limited, a 25-year-old financial services firm, as well as the founder and producer, of Ishq Films. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Excellent. Launched in early 2020, Lakshmi, India's first woman-only financial platform, gives tools to invest as well as education and financial planning. It aims to help women across professions, work experiences, lifestyles and age groups to invest, thereby creating a community of financially aware and empowered women. At Anand Rathi, she pioneered the commodity and currency futures desks along with wealth management business for the mass affluent. Having won several accolades in the financial services sector, she wanted to pursue her passion, namely filmmaking. That's when she set up Ishq Films with the intent of capitalizing her bent of mind for the arts as well as honing her business acumen to meaningful and credible cinema. An alumnus of Harvard Business School, Preeti has also completed a postgraduate program in family managed businesses from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research and has completed her BCom from HR College, Mumbai. She is married to Pradeep Gupta, co-founder and vice chair of Anand Rathi Group, and has 2 children. Her interests extend to music. She is a trained classical singer with diploma in Hindustani vocals, a practice that she would like to pursue once again. So with those words, let's open the panel for a discussion. Women in business, there has been research conducted globally, and what we find today is winds of change are gathering momentum. Already we see 18% of the family business leaders globally being women, which is certainly a much higher rate than what we have seen maybe a few decades ago. However, it's still far from unleashing the full potential that women in families offer for family businesses, because it's just still less than 1/5 if we see. And of course, the rate is much higher in Europe and Central Asia. When it comes to countries like India, the rate would be much, much lower than that 18%. So while the global average is 18%, which is low enough, the Indian average would be far, far lower. So let's start with the 2 women that we have here with us today, both of whom are leading businesses in their own right. And maybe my first ask of both would be, if you can, maybe we'll start with Hani to my left. So if we can start with your journey and give us some flavor and how you went about it, how probably you started this journey. Probably it started way ago while you were growing up. Maybe the way your upbringing itself prepared you for more challenges in days to come. And how it helped you blossom into an entrepreneur in your own right. It would be great to have some insights from you, Hani. Over to you.
Thank you, Pranav. You're right when you say that the journey doesn't just start when you graduate or when you take up your first job or then when you decide to enter the family business. The opportunity for a woman should be there to enter the family business, so that's a separate topic. But very much the grooming starts at a very young age. And in this case, I will say it helps to have a strong matriarch. There is no, your strong matriarch in a family where there are daughters becomes your champion. She can champion your voice if she herself has a voice. So she becomes your natural ally and she can champion your cause and some of the issues that do come up eventually in succession planning and so on. So for us, you know, we're originally a family of 5. I have a sister and a younger brother. So there were 2 girls, and then the brother came a lot later. So as it is, the feminine energy and the feminine voice was quite powerful as it was. I think if I can just tell you that there was no expectation from any of us, from my father or mother, to ever join the family business per se. We were, both me and my sister as well as my brother, we've had the same educational opportunity, same social opportunity, and I think that is true for all in today, in certain sections of, society, parents do not at the time of education or social opportunities differentiate between their girls and boys. The same level of education is provided to both. I think the differentiation comes when there are economic considerations. But if they are not, then the girls and the boys are equally educated. So we were given the same opportunity, and I have worked outside the family business for many years. Before, actually it was an opportunity in 2006 that, my dad asked me, would you want to look at Akbar Ali's, which at that time again, there was a family division that had come to my father. So from that angle, I entered, and then from then again, because I enjoyed it so much, then there was a bigger opportunity at Biostat where we had taken over a small seed company from Ahmedabad. And he asked me to just sit through the integration between this very small company and a larger company, which was ours. And that's how I got initiated. So I think there was really no expectation that I would be there long term. Even I did not think I would be there long term. I thought it was a project that I was doing. I was a consultant earlier, so I just thought I would, do this project and then see where it took me. But I think, and again, I will compliment my father here. He spent a lot of time with me in those early years. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of, what we call grooming, but really a lot of discussion and dialogue. And, that kind of allows you to also make decisions and know that, okay, someone is behind you to kind of make sure that you're not totally off path, And some of the things that Dr. Vatsraj said, that, the second or the first generation doesn't listen, it is not my experience. So it could very well be for others, it is just not my experience. So there was a lot of, and then that kind of became this wonderful, because, my dad wasn't around much growing up. He was kind of building his own business and all. So this was a really lovely thing for me to have with him. So that kind of became a bit of the buy-in, the relationship in the family business, to have this amazing relationship blossom outside the family and in the business. And so kind of that's how and now it's been over a decade that I've been with Biostat and Nandi Seeds in particular.
Right, so maybe we'll go to Preeti. Preeti, what we hear from Hani is probably that at a very early age, she had a voice at the dinner table. There was equality of opportunity all through, and the early upbringing, the confidence that gave her, probably enabled, and these were somehow enablers consciously or subconsciously put in place from a very, very early age to ensure that she had the confidence, ability, competence, development to be able to take over family business. It would be nice to understand your thoughts also on this and how these enablers could contribute immensely to the ultimate and eventual goal of having women, daughters, whatever else, who are able to really bring forth their best in terms of entrepreneurship and abilities.
Thank you, Pranav and Umi. Great, Hani, great to hear your answer, because I was just reflecting on my experience. By the way, I came here at the same room 15 years back with Deepali Goenka, talking about women in family businesses. So from then to now, we're still talking about women in business. We should have a session about men in business as well, right? But I think my journey is actually absolutely the other extreme. So my father was an executive with with the Aditya Birla Group. So growing up, I did not have too much exposure to entrepreneurship. But the one thing he made sure was that, he moved me from Sydenham to HR, because HR was 7 to 10 in the morning, so that I could come and manage the family portfolio. So I think just financial independence, financial security, financial, managing your money, all of that was very early on sort of taught to me. Again, got married at 19 into a very conservative Marwadi family. The first thing my mother-in-law said was, I was registered for chartered accountancy, and she said, listen, who's going to do the social obligations, right? So I took a step back, because at 19, you're quite vulnerable. But I had interned with my uncle, who was a stockbroker. And a few years down the line, I think a couple of years down the line, my husband, that was the time when everybody wanted to be a stockbroker. So he said, okay, he was in textiles, and he said, I want to start this. I think I literally grabbed at that opportunity, and I said, okay, I know how to do this business, and I will come and, help you set it up. I think that's where my journey started. And I think I've done that journey of, baby office mein, bhabhi office mein, to really, MD office mein. So I think it's been interesting. Having said that, I think today we are a very unique business. My father and my husband joined hands and set up Anand Rathi. There's my brother in the business, there's me in the business, there's my sister-in-law in the business. There are 5 of us. And it's very, very unique because those relationships, as opposed to like parent and siblings, there is also, the relationship between my husband and my father, my sister-in-law and my father, or my brother and my husband. So it's hugely complicated, but I think what has helped is one, I think, and a lot of credit again to my father in terms of really setting up the family constitution early on. Really defining areas, saying, what is our role as family members, and which is essentially to stick our neck out, set up businesses when we want to. There is a proper decision taken of how much capital is allocated to each business. Typically, there is a timeline put that within 2 years, you have to make sure that business grows to a stage where you have professional management come in. So I think very well defined in that sense. And the Constitution is a huge enabler. Having said that, I think, I think to Dr. Vatsaraj's point, what happens at home is always carried into office, much as we like to say it doesn't, much as we'd like to say keep personal and professional separate. But if I've had an argument with my husband or with my brother at home, it will carry to work, there is no way saying, okay, we come to office and we're like, okay, now we're best of friends. I think important there again is the family dynamics. And for us, I think one of the things that we've worked very hard on and very consciously on is that our intent and North Star of the business is something that we talk about, discuss, in a very structured manner. So when we come to work, all of us know, hey, whatever may be our differences at home or whatever be our differences in style, at the end of the day, we are all driving towards this goal. And I think having separate business areas also helps. So I think having a very structured setup surely helps. We are, in some sense, a nuclear family. You were asked that question. So in that sense, we're still a nuclear family with very, very complicated dynamics. But I think we've managed to sort of, sail through that. Also, over a period of time, I think we've structured it in such a way that each one, so I've started Lakshmi, so we've also ensured that in the family business, if I feel that in the existing setup I'm not adding value and there's something that I want to do, whether it was Ishka Films or whether it was Lakshmi, there was a structured approach to it. The seed funding for Lakshmi came in from whichever family member believed they want to back it. It was not compulsory. My shareholding in the parent company remains where it is, but people who run that company day in, day out have separate reward systems, separate monetary benefits that are attached. So very consciously, every person takes a decision of whether they're going to continue in the business, what role are they going to play, if they're going to set up something of their own, what are they going to do. I can tell you when I spoke about Ishka Films, so I'd done an entire homework on setting up a film fund. And then we realized that it doesn't fit into the box of wealth management. We are very conservative wealth managers. And I told my family, I love this space. I think this is a very interesting space. I have some creative genes from my mom, so I want to do this. I promise you each one from the family fell off their chair. Films, like, we've never heard who does films, like, so. But I think that was an independent choice, and I think that is where my, the seed of setting up Lakshmi came about, because when you as an individual want to have an aspiration or a business for yourself, are you really working towards creating that corpus? What if the family doesn't want to back that business? So I think lots of possibilities, and I think the right way, of course, is to have a constitution which preempts a lot of these issues. Having said that, I think no constitution is fail-proof, foolproof. It's evolving as situations evolve. So,
Thanks so much, Preeti. That was very, very interesting. So the very fact that there was so much openness means that the family and probably your seniors did give you the full space to blossom as an entrepreneur. The willingness to allow you to make space for yourself, make mistakes, develop your own management style, your own business, which is indeed great. And I think that's what we're hearing from Hani as well, a lot of equality of opportunity, so to say, which is what brings out the best in individuals.
I'd still like to correct that. I don't think that really exists on paper. I think women in business still have to work much harder to prove themselves, and there is no taking away from that. I have to say this, still I did not build up the commodity business to become one of the largest commodity brokers in the country. There was always that thing, oh, you're great at people management. You want to look at HR. I'm like, no, I don't want to look at HR. I want to set up a business, right? I do think, like I said that journey from Bhabhi to, really a business owner, I do think women have to fight harder. I think it's great in families where, now for my next generation, I would probably make sure that there is equal opportunity, and I think a lot is changing there. Not when I started, and I'll be very candid, this is a closed door meeting, and I think we should address these, we should talk about this very openly, and I think women have to prove a little harder, whether it's family business or outside world.
So it's not a level playing field, unfortunately.
Well, at least it wasn't for me, and I think
Right.
different families, again, different experiences.
Sure.
But I think very early on, but it was a great sort of benchmark, I think, within the family to say, okay, if somebody within the family, if a woman can set up a business to that scale, which contributes so much to the larger,
Right.
pie, then I think you sort of, that's when you're taken very, very seriously. And I think that's, I've had conversations with a lot of friends. They reach out and they say, will you come on our board? And I said, but why isn't your wife who's working with you on the board? No, but we don't want to get the women of the family on the board. Now that says a lot, right? I think these are things that we should be cognizant of. I hear them all the time.
Absolutely. And there are very, very few families, but there are who really, okay, so let's step back. We heard Hani say that, and this has been my experience with many other families as well, that during the early ages of growing up, the opportunities are fairly equal. Though, I mean, if you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities or Mofussil areas, even educational opportunities are not equal. But there are many families who give that equality, at least in the early ages. But something changes when it comes to even non-business assets, giving them to daughters, equality is there. But when it comes to businesses and giving equality, there seems to be some hesitancy. And that's where I think, Hani, the next question might be for you. Do you think marriage changes things? When is it that this equality somehow seems to be losing out? Because to a certain age, I think that equality between son and daughter almost is there. But thereafter, it seems to be waning in many cases, not in all, of course.
I think for women, and especially girls who come from from businesses, marriage is a game changer. I think it changes the way, a lot of girls are settled off at the time of marriage, which what it means is that money, assets, stocks, whatever that may be, is either given to her and her husband in joint, or just to the husband. And at least for I cannot think of in my social circle where the girl was given the portfolio in her name. It was always joint or to the husband. And to my mind, I just think this is a very, very old way of thinking. This mindset is very old, and for a couple of reasons. Because you've raised a daughter who is liberated, very educated, but you have chosen to keep her at the mercy or benevolence of somebody else, financially, right? When you give away her wealth to her spouse. Or secondly, you have this girl who has, again, always had her own voice, and now suddenly she is, you've chosen to trust a practical stranger just because of his gender over your own child, someone that you have groomed for all these years. And I think the third point that I think, you know, in business, it is so difficult to find managers that think like owners. It is such a conversation. Managers need to think like owners, and you know, we try to inculcate that mindset. And here you have this very powerful resource, right? Trained in your living room, so to speak, that you're not allowing to enter the family business because you don't want the spouse, and you know, you don't know how then you will divide the business, and all these issues that come up. And it's such a loss. It's a loss for the business. It's a loss for, obviously, the girl, and it's a loss for the family itself. So it's just like a lose-lose situation. So, yeah, marriage for girls is a game changer, I would say.
Preeti, any insights you would like to add on that? Does that make the difference? What is it then, and how do we?
Yeah, again, for me, I think the experience is completely the extreme. I think the marriage changed a lot of things positively for me, because luckily for me, my husband and father decided to start a business together. But it is true, I think it is very important. I think it's more to do with saying who's part of the business. You know, to Hani's point, for example, if I as a daughter am part of the business, then marriage ideally should not affect that, because I'm still running that business. But it's also important for me as the child, and I'm not just saying daughter, whether it is a daughter or a son, if you are in the business, you have to make sure that it is you who comes to work every day. It is not, you know, if your spouse is not in the business, it's not the spouse coming along with you in the business. And I think that's very important. Whether it's, I think it's true for both genders. I mean, if my brother is a part of the business, you have to ensure that, and my sister-in-law is not, then he's the one who's coming to work. Similarly, if it was a business that I was a part of and it was my father's business and my husband wasn't, then it's something, that's my work life. And I think that is a differentiator. Personally, I feel marriage is a game changer because of the expectations that your husband's family may have from you. I think that is where it changes. You move cities, you may live in a different place. For example, the expectation from my husband's family in the initial years was that, you know, just be the perfect daughter-in-law. And how do you sort of react to that? I think those are very material. But I think if you're part of the business, I think it's important to sort of, to my mind, ideally, as long as the rest of, the spouse doesn't sort of implicitly, explicitly participate in what is not their, playground, then I think it should not be a game changer, to my mind.
So very quickly, just one question for both of you. What would be your advice? I mean, we have some way to go for meritocracy, level playing field, equality to fully blossom, but what would be your advice to maybe upcoming women entrepreneurs in particular? Maybe Preeti, you can start and then.
Well, I think one, women don't come to the table. So I think women don't come to the table, whether it is your own business, whether it is your father's business, whether it's your husband's business, or you're working somewhere. I think as a woman, it's very important to first get that equality in your own head. I don't think we ask for that equality. And I think that's very important. I have people who will ask me, why do you put a Rathi in your name? The reason I started putting Rathi was because Preeti and Gupta are the commonest of names, and if people wanted to look me up, they would find like millions of Preeti Guptas. But the fact that you will question me that why am I using Rathi because I'm married itself is to me it is like, but I am a part of the family. I am born in that family, so why should I not own that name, right? So I think that equality has to come into your head first. Second, I think as a woman, you bring a lot to the table, a lot of substance, a lot of power. I know that between 5 of us today, I think I and my sister-in-law are really the leveling, influence in any sort of family, and there are outbursts. There are times when the family is having this huge argument, etc. And I think we bring that to the table where we are sort of the more sort of moderators, and we are able to sort of help solve a lot of those. And I think most importantly, if you have a dream, I think you ask for it. Chances are you will make a mistake. Today, a lot of women and men don't want to, like he rightly said, don't want to be in the family business. By the way, I was speaking in Babson just before COVID, and in a classroom full, a hall full, and I asked how many of you are going to go back to your family businesses, and I had 2 hands in an entire auditorium. Nobody wanted to go back to family businesses. So I think the important thing is, and it's important to know that if you're part of a business, a platform that's already there, it's a great opportunity for you to build on it. Yes, I've done the reverse journey. I've left that platform and now done a startup at this age, but I think that comes with a lot of experience. So follow your dreams, pursue it. Most importantly, get rid of that self-doubt, whether it is doing your business, doing anything that you try and do. And I say this all the time because of Lakshmi, managing your money, most importantly, your financial security. Like, let go of that self-doubt and take charge. I think that's where it all begins.
Thanks, Preeti. That was very nice.
Can I
Sure,
interact a little? I
yeah.
can add something. See, what here a question would come to everybody, that here we have 2 ladies who have been given the opportunity and a platform in their father's businesses, correct? The question that we ask and arises is that why is not, which she said that why is not this person on the board of directors? So the issue is that, do a woman, as a girl, get that equal opportunity to get into the business of her father-in-law, or after she gets married, does she get it? Now, we have cases where this has also happened. So let it not be only that, because if what she says is rightly, that if you have the will, and if you have something to prove, and if you ask for it, you do it. See, we have this very successful case, I'll just take 2 minutes, of Manju Dry Cleaners. She was, as an husband was in chemical business, Manju was our women's program, family program from SP Jain, Parimal and us at Andheri at that time, yeah. So she joined our thing, and then she went to her father-in-law and says that you have stopped your laundry business. Why not we start it? So the father-in-law says, I cannot run it, I will run it. And she got a lot of help, and today she is running one of the most successful laundry businesses in Mumbai. So, and understand, it's a separate question. We call her to speak at occasions. The father-in-law speaks in, and few years ago, the husband has handed over his business to his son, and he has now become, he now also answers his wife in the business.
So Dr. Vatsaraj, I actually started working in my husband's business, which was more the in-law side, and grabbed that opportunity.
That's
and I think that's how I started that journey. Having said that, you're completely right. I think it's important to, and you know, where this ended. So my father-in-law, he passed away a few months back. So we did that journey where he would not even look me in the eye when he was talking, because that was the sort of environment at home, right? To really him making me the executor of his will. So that's the sort of relationship, and that trust only built because I built that business, the stockbroking business, and that's when he saw, okay, I can see what you can do. And I think that pride just went on, and that trust kept building. But you're right, it's not easy. It's still a difficult situation, and I think this is something that we as Indian families need to talk about a lot more. That is there an equal opportunity for the daughter-in-law as well? I remember I was in this session, sorry if this is going to pull 2 minutes more, but this is a large ET Times, Economic Times Family Business Awards, where you had a patriarch, very well-known gentleman, I'm not going to name him, where he said on stage that we have and understanding that no daughters and no daughter-in-law, no women will participate in the business because they only add to the problem. He said this on stage. And I think every person in the audience literally got up and, there were two people who went on stage and said, this is ridiculous. You can't be saying things like that. And today that group is in, and I'm not saying it's because of that decision, but it is in a lot of trouble. So I think that conversation needs to be had, that how do you give equal opportunity to whether it's a daughter, whether it's a daughter-in-law, to family members who want to be part of the business. I think how do you create an equal opportunity for them?
And the biggest case study that we have today when we teach is based on this television serial which is going on, Ahilya. Where the father-in-law, who was the king, recognized that the daughter-in-law was more competent than his son, and he eventually handed over the kingdom to the daughter-in-law. And we all know today what Ahilya Bai did with that Malwan and that Indore and that Madhya Pradesh. She made it into a great place to live with, which is one of the best examples we give today, that if you have it, ask for it.
Yeah, I think the dialogue of men, women, daughter, daughter-in-law, I think that needs to stop. I think it needs to be children. It really needs to be siblings. It needs to be people.
Absolutely, and ultimately it's all about merit. The best person for the job.
Absolutely.
Right, that's how it should be. Honey, you wanted to speak on the trust part as well in terms of succession.
We spoke about marriage and spouses and this reluctance of having women in the business. And I think a lot of it comes from the worry that spouses will enter the business, and then that'll create friction between, the existing members of the family, and how will the husband deal with the father-in-law, the brother-in-law, and so forth. So just speaking from what we did, and Pranay knows about this because he was there for, our part of it. We had 3 siblings, and we individually, we're separate, but we're together. So legally separate, but as a family together. And I think one of the easiest decisions for us, and there was complete consensus on this, is that me, my sister, my brother, me and my sister were already, this happened in 2000, just pre-COVID. So we were well married, had children and so on. My brother at that time was not. And it was a unanimous decision that we did not want our spouses legally in the business. So I'll tell you what that means for us. What that meant is that should there be a situation where there's an untimely death of one of us, one of the siblings, and our parents are not around as well, and our children are not a majority of age at that time, it would be our siblings that would become guardians of the trust, as well as the guardians of the business, till the children reach the age of majority. And the thinking, the thought behind it was that it's not like we don't trust our spouses or any of that, but just that we have faith in our siblings that they would do what is correct for the business and therefore the children. And also, this is perhaps the only part of our family agreement that is based on trust, because we hope it's a highly unlikely event that it will get invoked. But this is the kind of thing that we did. So I mean, I'm sure it could go in reverse as well, but it just meant that we chose family as in the original, members of the family first, and said that we are a family first, but we're also a family that is in business together. And what is good for the business is good for the family, and what is good for the family should and will be good for the business. So, and also I want to say something, Preeti, you talked about your name, right? And I get this a lot because I have not changed my name. And I don't know if the word equal will ever be, which woman will ever stand up and say, oh, I had it equal. I think the word perhaps is equitable. Is it equitable? I like that word better. And people say, but why haven't you changed your name? You're married now. And the simple answer I give is, oh, this is the name I was born with. Have you changed your name because of any coincidence of choice? And obviously the answer is no. So that's a simple reason. I think in your head, as whether you're a man or woman, as an entrepreneur, no one is going to show you the way. No one is going to guide you. In fact, you might have the opposite. You might have people who want to lead you off, or all the naysayers, all the people who say no. You just have to, as Preeti said, get up every day and just want to do what you want to do. That is, whether you're a woman or a man, and eventually, when success comes, again, if you're a woman or a man, people have no choice but to acknowledge it, and no choice but to, give you your due. So I think in that sense, there is no gender, for achievement or for getting up and doing what you want. It is a bit harder for women, that I will say, but you have to just, be at it.
Right. Thank you so much.
One thing I'd
sure.
like to add here, I think this is coming from experience and also because Dr. Vatsarat spoke about it. I think women are surely CEOs of most homes, but when they are CEOs at work also, I think that dual responsibility is handled even better. I've seen that because you understand work pressures, you manage home pressures, and you are sort of, playing the right balance between them. There is a very ancient philosophy of ancient practice in Indian households, a family that eats together, prays together, etc. I've realized, and there's research that says that if as a family you work out together, you walk together, you do things in synchronized. There was a reason why people did, it's very, today I understand it better. 15 years back I would be like, yeah, what are you saying? But even if you are like praying together and you are doing, whether it is clapping your hands in a bhajan kirtan, there is research that shows that you start thinking in a synchronized manner as well. And I was surprised when I saw that research and I went back to saying, okay, why did families do things together? And I think that's one very important, and I think the CEO of the family really manages that and really owns that, and that's as important a role, I think, that women play in households.
That was excellent. That really, we can end on that note. The fact that the multiple roles that you play actually complement each other and help each other, reinforce each other. So that's great. I think we have to break for a shorter tea break and then come back quickly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Viti.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you. This is so nice.
I think this has come nicely at the end of the first two sessions where we spoke about family succession, the ingredients of it, continuity of the family. So this session, I hope you can all hear me. This session is about family offices, alternate investment opportunities, and so on. And it's good to set a small context here. So I'm based in Bangalore for the past 20 years. And I've really seen that ecosystem come about of the startups. And you think of the startups, when Flipkart got its first $500,000, when Nitin and Nikhil set up their businesses, when many others, when Ranjan Pai came back for Manipal, so on and so forth. So I've seen that whole growth of business, and I've also interacted with a lot of the older business families, and their constant point is, we could have done all of this. We had the wherewithal, we had the connections, we had the intelligence. But why did we miss all of this? This pooling of capital, the venture capitalists, we could have done all of this. Why did we not do it? We have the network. And that's the context I want to use in the family office, alternate investments, so on and so forth. And also families, multiple examples we've heard of how they look at the next generation, what they look at, so on and so forth. So with this, I won't, without too much ado, we've got a high-powered panel here. My name is K.T. Chandy. I'm a partner and co-lead the private practice. EVA as a firm has also set up a private practice, a practice to take care of the interests of unlisted companies, private pools of capital, venture funds, promoters, succession planning, so on and so forth. So with me on the on this panel is Gautami Gavankar. She's the CEO of the estate planning and trusteeship practice of Kotak Mahindra. So welcome, Gautami. We have Pranav Mahajani. He's the president of Trika, Let's Venture Trika. And I won't overly introduce people, but you'll know all of them. Sonali Pradhan, who's head of wealth planning of Julius Baer India, and Shweta, who's the head of wealth structuring and tax at Edelweiss. So welcome to all of you. So let me start off this conversation on by, and our topics are alternate investment opportunities and family offices. So let's try and demystify this whole concept of family office. People start thinking of what is this animal of family office, what is it all about? So let me start this question let me start this discussion by asking Shweta, if you can, in layman's term, define what a family office is, and we can take that from there. And how is it different from what people have always been doing? They've always been investing. How is a family office different?
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Good evening, everyone. So, though the concept of family office is quite nascent in India, it's in a very structured form, it's nascent in India. Globally dates back to 1838 when Mr. Morgan founded the Morgan House, now known as JP Morgan, to manage his own family funds, and in 1882 Rockefeller was found, which still exists, by the way, as a family office. But in India, though we say that it's nascent, but in an unstructured way, it was always there. Like if you talk about kingdoms and princely states, the kings used to have some trusted advisors to advise them on a lot of administrative and strategic issues, which is the next kingdom to capture, or which are the administrative ways in which we can manage the kingdom, or how should I choose my next successor. So if you see, there always was somebody advising the king. And when we talk about modern family businesses, even now, what are the kind of decisions a business owner grapples with apart from business decisions? So they could be decisions like, okay, where should I invest my surplus money? What are the alternative ways in which I should invest? I mean, I have always invested in my own business, so are there any alternative ways of investment? Again, from a succession perspective, who should be my next successor? How should I manage family and business? So, because family businesses have a very unique characteristic. There's always an emotional angle attached to the business angle, right? So how should my family values be aligned with my business? What should be the best structure for my business from a tax perspective, from a regulatory perspective? So considering all of this, okay, a business owner would depend on external advisors for help. Now, what a family office does, it seeks to solve this problem of the business owner, where it becomes a one-stop shop for the business owner to focus on these issues, so that the business owner can focus on his business, but the family office can resolve all of these issues for him. Okay, so typically you can say in a nutshell, a family office is like a private office for a wealthy individual, which seeks to, if I have to just break it down, what are the kind of functions it does? It does wealth management, which is a traditional function, but it not only does wealth management, it also does, say, bookkeeping, the administrative duties like bookkeeping or tax planning, the more strategic succession planning, estate planning, philanthropy planning, and in a more evolved family office, it also goes to, say, lifestyle assets management. For example, a business owner wants to buy a yacht, okay, which jurisdiction I should buy the yacht in? He does not have the expertise, so maybe he can go to a family office. In one of the cases, we had seen that a person had an issue that one of the parents was suffering from Alzheimer's. So he said, okay, I don't know which is the best medical treatment, or where do I get the best medical treatment for this disease? And a family office did some research and they found it. So basically it becomes like a one-stop shop for a family business needs, which encompasses not only business, but also family. So I think, yeah, in a nutshell, it's like a private office for an individual.
That's a complex nutshell. So if I were to try and sort of break that down, it is today, businesses have money on their balance sheet and they manage it, and they probably reinvest it in their own business. But going by the, the trend in India of multiple new opportunities, is there a separate team of people I can entrust growth of my money and multiplication of my money and the management of that. So it's an outside of the organization. It's not really inside the organization. You entrust it to people like yourselves to manage. Is that
Right. So it could be both ways. It could be that, as I said, it's not as formal in India as it is in many developed countries. It could be a setup which is in my own organization, if I'm an entrepreneur, or it could be a setup outside my organization where I have professionals outside and I outsource all of these functions to a professional. But it could be both ways. It could be like a single family office which is in my own organization, like a lot of, so for example, Premji Invest or Catamaran, all of these, which is Narayan Murthy's family office. So all of these have found their own single family office, but there are also multifamily, which is a setup which is outside the organization.
Yeah. So with that, let me ask Gautami and Shweta touched upon that, right? Single family office, multiple family offices. And if you also want to elaborate on how a family office and the concept of that. Family office is just a term. There's no binary definition to it. How that helps the family, you know, what it opens, the avenues it opens.
So while Shweta was explaining, as Chandy said, complex family office concept, you should just imagine it's a munim. Okay, in olden days you had a munim, you are an estate manager who you went to and he did everything for you. Right from your money management, right from your jewelry, right from your getting your dresses stitched, so on and so forth. You relied upon a guy. That a guy today in the complex world has become family office. It's again a very simplified version, but it's not. It's like this. Every client, every individual promoter of a business or a professional who is a high net worth and ultra high net worth individual may not have the time, wherewithal and the bandwidth to manage all his or her affairs. And if helping them manage their affairs, you need someone, that's your family office. Now, if you are that large, you will go and form your own family office, because then, so family office, I think I will spread it into two buckets. One which does your investments, the other which does everything else minus investments. So if I were to call it ancillary, incidental, value added, whatever. So one bucket is investments, other buckets are everything else minus investments. So if you were to look at it like that, you can have a wealth manager to do your investment advisory. But the wealth manager may not necessarily handle your tax, legal, your immigration planning, your multi-jurisdictional issues, your succession planning. So families have thought that, okay, can I have all this expertise in my own company, in my own family? So you'll have a legal specialist, you'll have a tax specialist, you'll employ a debt specialist if it's equity, debt, then equity specialist, debt specialist, alternate specialist. You create your own team and it's called single family office. So Mr. Premji, as Shweta mentioned, or Mr. Narayan Murthy, as Shweta mentioned, have created their own family offices, have created a team of experts which helps them manage their family affairs. We know of a family who has some 120 apartments outside of India. So if you have 120 apartments outside India which are rented, collection of rent, ensuring that they are housed in a proper manner so that the tax efficiencies are arrived, succession planning of those 120 apartments is done in some form or the other, and I mentioned that it is outside India. So imagine the complexities which can come in. So you may, if that's the scale of your operations, you will want your own team. Okay? But your own team may or may not be able to write opinions for you. So you will then bank upon EYs of the world or AZBs of the world to get some tax views, legal views, or maybe for all that you will work with US lawyers or UK lawyers. But that's like running your own family office, having your own team connecting with a lot of people. But sometimes the scale at which a family is operating, they may not want to create their own setup. Imagine having a legal expert, tax expert, their knowledge, their attrition, their growth aspirations. So platforms like some of the wealth management outfits today offer you multi-family office platforms. So what they say is, because we work with multiple sets of clients, families which are business families or professional families, we come across these situations, these questions, these issues that every family faces, and we have a set of people that we have employed which can cater to all your needs. So that's the multi-family office proposition. Say, for example, you see Sonali, Shweta here, or me, we run multi-family office propositions for our institutions. We can cater to some of these needs which families have. Why will families come to us? Why will they not go to a lawyer or to a tax consultant? It's not, and we cannot give opinions. Let's be very clear. None of us can give opinions on record. So I think families want a entity or an individual who they can discuss all their issues, a one-point contact, who will then go and get them the right information, right advice, right views that they need to implement. You want somebody who's thinking from your side. It's exactly like a business where you have a CFO who kind of looks at you, comes back to you, is your man. You are looking for that person in your personal affairs or your, your investment affairs. So that's the differentiation between single and multi-family office, which we are looking at.
Oh, thank you, Gautami, on that. But I also feel, you've referenced Premji Invest and Catamaran, and both of these, the primary wealth came from IT services. But if you look at their investments, they have set up these family offices to source newer avenues. You can think of multiple unicorns in India today, which have these, these Catamaran and Premji Invest on their cap table. So it also widens the perspective, right? Sometimes when you're only doing your business, you're reinvesting. Are you letting opportunities go because of the lack of information?
Absolutely.
So with that, let me just ask Sonali, and you're part of a global organization that is renowned for all of this. How would you, what would you say is the greatest advantage of a multi-family office, and what does it, bring to the table, and particularly with your global lens?
Right. So, like you would have seen, both the panelists, when they spoke about single family office, we have been referring to likes of Premji's or Narayan Murthy. So we are talking about a large number there, So the first important point when you are looking at a selection between a single family office or a multi-family office is, first thing first is the corpus size, right? If you are, is it better? Is this better now? Great, yeah. So first thing first, when you are looking to select between a single family office or a multi-family office, you need to look at your corpus size. On an average, to run a single family office, historically we have seen one spends around 1% as a cost to run your own family office. 1% usually translate into around $1 million. So you have to now look at your own corpus size and see that does it really make sense for us to spend that $1 million to run my corpus? Or then do I look at, multi-family office managers such as ours or Kotak for that matter, whereby there is already a team which is built up. Now, in nutshell, what is family office? You are typically hiring a group of individuals who are going to execute or perform these dedicated activities for you. Financial advice happens to be the most important part of it. Now, if you were to go in the market and hire a CIO, okay, there is an X amount of salary that you will have to pay for that particular person. Plus, he may or may not specialize in equity as well as debt market, as well as passion assets, as well as international assets, as well as real estate, right? So when you talk about investments, there are different shades or there are different elements to it. So like Premji's probably can have that kind of panel of or battery of individuals who can help them do this. But what if you don't have? Like you also have a sizable corpus, but yeah, probably not that size whereby you will be able to hire even a talent from the market, right? So you may be willing to hire a talent, but the talent should be willing to come to you, right? If it's only a single family office, if I know that I'm only managing the money of a family where I have limited role, I don't know what kind of flexibility will I get in my decision making, the talent is also limited. As against that, when you look at a multi-family office provider such as ours, I mean, that's what we do for a living, So there is a battery of all these individual professionals who are available. depending on what is the area of expertise that you are particularly looking at. You can pick and choose, right? I mean, suppose, for example, you are a real estate heavy organization, yeah, you always will have real estate expertise within you, but you may not know about international markets, right? That's where then you may have to look upon someone like us to give you that insights on what's happening in the international market. So I think it's a hybrid model that works the best as of now in the market is what I have seen. You have your own family office. Certain investments, certain decisions are always kept within the family, but there are certain decision or expertise which can be outsourced. And that's where the multifamily offices come into play.
Thank you, Sonali, for that. So, with this, therefore, what is a family office? It's you may not always need to put a structure around it. What you need is a thought around it. What do I do with my surplus capital? How do I invest it? How do I diversify? What interests me? What is long term? What are new businesses? Am I missing out on something that's happening outside? Do I have expertise that can show me multiple opportunities? So with that, Shweta, and it's a difficult question. Once one sets up a family office, what's a typical structure that you've seen? What are best practices? What do you put in place? What's the interaction with the family? What is the mandate people give to family offices? If you can take.
So it is not an easy question, but it's a very cliched term in the family office space that once you know one family office, you know one family office, because every family office is unique. So it's very difficult to say what kind of structure you should have, but it depends upon a lot of things that even Sonali touched on. That what is the size of the corpus, what are the needs of the family, for what time span that you want to set the family office for. Now, if it's a single family office where everything is done in-house, maybe the promoter wants to set up multiple entities, which could be to balance taking tax advantages, to maybe solving more complex needs like estate planning. So maybe he will set up entities like a trust structure. He will set up LLPs for getting some tax advantage. He'll set up some companies, which could be NBFCs for making investments. So it could be a holistic structure set up, and he might have multiple people employed in that family office space. But if it's a multi-family office where the business owner actually outsources the functions to a multi-family office, maybe he does not need too many people in his setup. He might have one or two people and one or two right set of people who can actually liaise with the multifamily office. So that could be a setup that may not even be a formal entity structure. It could just be two people sitting out of the CFO's office. So as I said, it depends on what is the objective of setting up the family office and what kind of family office you are setting up. The structure depends on that.
Great. No, thank you, Shweta. So, I'll move on to you, Pranav. And Trika and EY just did a market survey, and we brought out this report on the private market monitor. And one of the key feedback from this was, and we met multiple family offices, multiple families, UHNIs, so on and so forth. So the resonating theme was we want multiple opportunities. We want to, we want to get into startup investing. We want to get into unicorns before they are IPO. We want to be on the cap table of some of these, and all of these are in different businesses, not anything connected with where they are. So, so how are you seeing, and you all do a lot of this, so what is the trend that you're seeing of family offices and the sectors that they want to get into? How are you visualizing?
I'll give a little long answer to this long question. So I think the outcome in the report was that 82% of the families today are seeking direct investment into large ecosystem plays, unicorns. Because today, if you're using a Zomato, if you're buying something on Nykaa, then why not be a part of that journey? That's what everybody feels. And 75% of them, said that in the next 3 to 5 years, they want to invest directly onto the cap table. I think, but we need to step back and understand this whole journey, because this is a new asset class which is coming in India. Globally, it's a very big asset class, been around for nearly 3 or 4 decades now. So whenever you start having some money, it could be a CEO of a large company, it could be industrialist, it could be anybody, and he typically goes to a party and meets friends and families, and he says, कि ये नया startup आया, I have put money, very exciting. Somebody is doing something in crypto, and most of the people have no idea about it. So he said, ठीक है, you write मेरा 5 lakh रुपया लिख लो. That's what people say, and then as you spend more and you become more gambler, you keep increasing. That's the creation of an angel investing. That's what we see all the time. 99% of angel investing money goes to the drain. That's the global statistics. 1% of them really become who they are. As you step ahead and then you realize, okay, you're getting some success, and the corpus what you have is large. You want to invest $1, $2, $3, $4 million. You can't go that route. The next best option for you is to go to a venture capital and say, I'll become an LP. I'll give you 30 crores, 40 crores, 50 crores. You manage it. You are raising, $100 million fund. Go out, invest. I like your thesis. I like you. You have past record. Let's go out and do this. That's when he's seeing the fund manager have all the fun, and this guy is sitting outside just seeing what's happening. The fee structure typically is 2/20, 2% fees and 20% carry. On day 0, you feel, okay, he's taking 2%, it's not much. People don't remember much about that 20%. And when he removes the 20%, removes the tax, and when you get it in your hand, you say, oh, if you get it in your hand, if you're successful, you'll get it in your hand. If you're not, then it's just gone to the dogs. So people have become a little smarter. India has 2 or 3 cycles now. Most of the funds are 2-3 years old, 2-3 cycles old. And the younger generation have come back and, they've gone back to their fathers and say that, you want to blow out that money on that guy, give it to me, I'll blow it anyways. It's a fact, right? So that's when the younger generation starts coming in. They are educated across the world. They look at startups in a very different manner. They are business families. So, and I always keep saying that, business families ko dhanda samajhta hai. Whether you are selling chips or you are selling wafers, dhanda is dhanda. They understand paisa kaisa banega. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, and I think that's a part of the gene. They just understand it and they can see that. What happens after that is like any other asset class, you want to build a portfolio. You want to build a portfolio of early stage companies. You want to have your money set in VCs who can look at deals which you don't have access to. And third is the unicorns, which is now sort of out of fashion, thanks to few listings which you have had. But there's a lot of FOMO which comes in. Everybody wants to get into a unicorn. And the reason you want to get into a unicorn is saying that, okay, they have done, all the wise men in the world have written capital. Nothing is going to happen to them. And they will list and we'll all make a lot of money, which is not true. That's the reason, if you look at somebody like Tiger Global, he has come back and said, okay, I will not do $500 million plus deals. I want to do $100 million plus deals so that I can catch them, younger. But I think this is an asset class which is, Shandy is evolving. I think it's just starting, and we are seeing, if you look at people like Nykaa, you look at, Zomato, Policybazaar, they have had bad listings, but they're great businesses, and in the next 5-10 years, I think they will do well.
Thank you, Pranav. So, the opportunity to get into businesses, how to get into it, and a more structured approach to, in your words, blowing up your money. There may be merit in a structured approach. Sonali, I want to ask you this question on, we are seeing a lot of people talk about overseas family offices. That's suddenly the trend, right? Singapore has 13R, 13U, I think every family has heard of. So what do you think of this trend and how does that work? And when is it even feasible? Money inside, money outside, family members outside, family members in India. So you want to just touch briefly on that, Sonali?
Sure. I'll tell you, just 3-4 years back probably, this whole conversation around international family office started making rounds in the India market. And when I look back, why that happened primarily was, of course, a currency hedge or even a country hedge, right? I mean, that was a time when demonetization took place. A couple of other political, economical events which had happened, and everybody was looking at creating a kitty outside our own business or outside our own home country. And that's where the whole international family office concept started coming in. To add to that, what happened was certain products, which were very much probably preferred by these families were unfortunately not available in India. So something as simple as if I have to talk about a silver ETF, right? We have been talking about silver ETF for last 4 years now. But India, the product was not available, right? You could either buy a physical silver or then indirectly you will have to make an investment. But a product which is traded exchange, there was no product available, whereas internationally it was very easily available. Similarly with ESG investments, so the new age companies, the one which are going to make impact on the society, a lot of promoters were keen to take their bets on these companies, but yeah, well, there was no adequate ecosystem that was available at that point of time, which was very easily made available internationally. Apart from that, of course, when Singapore came up with this whole 13X, 13R, which is now 13O, 13U, they came up with a fabulous scheme whereby they said that you invest in my country, I will give you a residence permit, as well as your entire investment income I'll make tax-free in a complete legitimate way, right? In Singapore, right? So all my capital gains, all my dividend income, all my interest income, which are typically what we call as passive income, that's completely tax-free in Singapore, right? So when, and earlier to make use of such tax incentives, people used to go to Dubai. But Dubai, of course, has its own perception, image, whatever that you would like to call, right? When Singapore started offering this in a much legitimate way, a clean forward way, yeah, everybody grabbed that. And Chandy, we did the whole event around Singapore Family Office. So I guess, that's how that whole concept of family office in the offshore world started. And today, whether it is Singapore, whether it is in UAE, in fact, there are 4 or 5 options, so right from DIFC, DMCC, or Abu Dhabi the commercial zone, there are many options which are available in UAE itself. Apart from that, favorite jurisdiction like Switzerland always exists, for setting up a family office. Everything has its pluses and minuses, but the most limiting factor that we have seen is the capital repatriability, right? As much as the families are looking at taking away at least 30 to 40% of their net worth outside India, practically it may not be that easily possible, right? So yes, one has to then look at a long-term planning, which of course, Chandy, you specialize in, whether through a non-resident family member or hiring someone internationally. But yes, I don't see this trend anywhere residing. In fact, there is more and more demand in this whole international family office. Only thing is that, yeah, one has to see what the regulators is allowing you to do and not take extra bets just to take the money out of India. But yeah, I do see this developing, in fact, more and more as the time is evolving.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonali. And I would just move to you, Gautami. What are you seeing in Kotak's multi-family office proposition? Are people looking at overseas assets, overseas family offices? How are you seeing it?
So before I answer that question, a quick thing on what Pranav said, angel investment. But out of that, maybe that 50 portfolio, somewhere you have an MOU, somewhere you just have a letter of intent, somewhere you have a shareholders agreement, but no articles, nothing is covered, somewhere you don't have share certificates. That was the situation. Only 4 companies out of that were relevant, and there also some documentation was missing. So it's not, and where will the business families have the time and the wherewithal to kind of follow up with all the things which are required to ensure that you have the rights as a shareholder recognized in that company. So it's extremely important to consider this, and keeping this in mind, do you have somebody who will manage this for you? It becomes important, and thus the need for a family office, whether single or multi, is a family's decision, but becomes relevant. Going to the question which Chandy asked, Sonali rightly said that Singapore was the jurisdiction and probably today is still considered as a safer jurisdiction, but with what has happened in the COVID times, with what has happened in Hong Kong, even locked now, there are some questions being asked. While people have not just moved to UAE, unfortunately UAE has a grey list situation from an FATF perspective, so there is again a question mark. But Dubai has kind of really moved ahead. They've kind of offering this golden visa for 10 years to a lot of industrialist business families here. Would have got celebrities, business families would have been invited by the Dubai government to take the golden visa. With that, a lot of family members, a lot of business families are thinking of either setting up their own business subsidiaries, because you know the kind of guys there, you'll have an easy entry into DIFC or any other economic zone that you want to set up your family offices or your businesses. So there are two things why people are looking at. People are looking at bona fide businesses and under the ODI route, take 400% of their net worth outside India, or they are looking at only from an investment perspective, using the ODI route again, but through an NBFC setup to set up a similar family office outside India. So what is more important to look at is that it is okay to say that I want to set up a family office outside India, but how will you set it up? Your LRS, so the only way money can go out is LRS, in a way, for individuals. So what goes out is $250,000 US. With $250,000 US, even if you add 4 families or 8 family members, you have to, according to the RBI rule, you have to hold it in your own names. You will club it at some levels, but at least it's going under your own name. That can be invested into financial services, but that is not your family office. It is a small percentage of your overall portfolio that will go out under the LRS. So if you want to consider setting up family offices, you are looking at having either an NBFC here in India, which is into financial services, or you have a CIC here in India, which is trying to use the money to create your offshore vehicles. It is not necessarily that every family has an NBFC or has a CIC, and thus important to understand how these structures will be set up. So objective of the family becomes extremely critical. What is it that you're aiming? And it is becoming all the more important because not necessarily, as we had the earlier the panel of the women entrepreneurs, we don't have a situation that every first, second and third generation is in India in the family business. So if you have Pranav knows about a situation that we are dealing with, if you have a huge family business or a self-created business and the second generation is not in the business, wealth is here. The wealth has to be enjoyed by the second generation or the third generation, and they are not here. Where is the repatriability, and how are we going to ensure that this repatriability in some manner trickles, if not the full amount? So I think these are some concerns that we see in our clients' families, and trying to see what's the best way to kind of address it.
No, there isn't one answer. It has to be custom built, fact pattern, what you want to do outside, what your interests are outside, what you think of the risk profile, etc. With that, we've not touched upon the AIF and the alternate investment opportunities and the advantages that AIFs have been, the whole SEBI, I think it came out in 2008 onwards, we've had this alternate investment opportunities. So how has that really blossomed in India, and what opportunities does that bring, Pranav?
So I think for a startup, if you look at the first level of investment, the angel investment, that typically happens through an AIF category 1 subcategory for a startup, what it is there, where a startup should not be older than 10 years, should be registered as a startup, and at the same time, they should not have a revenue more than 100 crores. And at that time, they can maximum capital, what they can accumulate under that is nearly 10 odd crores, $1.5 million odd dollars. I think what this route has done is a lot of new investors, it could be individuals, could be large family offices also. They have tasted blood with this, so they have gone out and written 1 crore, 2 crores, $500,000 into that family office, into that vehicle. This is actually like a roll-up vehicle. In India we have this. With our ecosystem we have one AIF here, and we have a roll-up vehicle in Delaware. We have a roll-up vehicle in Singapore, which we use for our global investment whenever money is sitting outside the country or whenever money is sitting inside the country and wants to go out for any of the foreign. I think that's where the LRS limits start hitting us. So usually in the starting of the year, nobody wants to invest, and as the year passes, the third, fourth quarter, people get really active about it. But I think what the AIF has really done is do two things. One is allow people to come and syndicate a transaction. Two is, I'll just give you a couple of names. If you look at people like Kunal Shah, or if you look like people like Anupam Mittal, who are very big angel investors, their portfolios will be worth $200, $300 million today. They have an eye for great companies, and they are very deep into the ecosystem. When such players are writing checks into an AIF, people want to follow them. Say, okay, he's an informed investor, he's taking the bet, let's write our 1 crore, 2 crore into it. What this has done is created, like in our database, we have approximately a couple of hundred large syndicators today in the country who could syndicate anywhere between $1 to $20 million odd, depending on what they are trying to do. And I think that has created a new breed of professional investors, and these are the guys who will then eventually get on to direct captive investment to come on. I think AIF is beautiful. There are some restrictions which we are trying to lobby with SEBI, saying that it's high time you liberalize it. But the regulation obviously takes much longer than reality.
No, absolutely, and we have all seen the AIF regime, right, where you can pool capital, get money in, invest overseas. Yes, it's subject to limits and so on and so forth, but that democratizes the whole investment opportunity. So anyone sitting anywhere can get the right asset, get the right opportunity. Yes, it's a blind pool, but you trust the manager, and that's where the manager skills come about. We've also seen this whole concept of family AIFs, right? And AIF is meant to be a pooling vehicle, but SEBI has granted multiple single-family, AIFs. Why would they do that? Is it just to get, discipline around it?
I think the question was towards me, right? So I think it becomes very critical to decide what is the investment entity that families will use, if you all want to use an investment vehicle. Normally what happens is if you have your companies and there's treasury money that gets invested, but that's not your personal money in a way, because your company is either listed or even if not unlisted, it's meant for the company purposes. But when you have a personal pool of assets, it becomes important at the family level to decide what is the right investment entity. The right investment entity could be the way olden days you had partnerships. You could have partnerships. You could have the LLP structures which people have been using of late. You could have a company structure, but whether that is a right thing to do from a pure investment perspective, because it does become an NBFC if it's only for investments. And then comes the new animal of AIF, alternate investment funds. So one will have to be very clear what is the objective of the family and decide the right investment entity. When you decide about the right investment entity, you'll have to look at it from a holistic perspective. The restrictions, if any, from a regulatory perspective, what I can do, cannot do. The taxation and the ultimate income which will come in my hands also becomes extremely critical. Like if you have a company, it's a cash trap. While companies are great for businesses, but is it great for holding only investments? May not be the best way. Okay, unless you are saying that the company will never take the money out in the hands of the shareholders, then it's okay. But if you want the money to come out in the hands of the individual family members, then company may not be the best way. Similarly, over a period of time, as AIF started being used as pooling vehicles, families said, okay, I have a patriarch, I have three, so there's a patriarch, there are three children, so say 2 daughters, 1 son, then they have their third generation also, who have their individual kitties of wealth. If each of them start investing in their own name, create some vehicles, you may not get the best, for example, you will have a particular investment, and Pranav will be able to explain that better. You will need to cut a check of 1 crore or of 5 crores. You may not want every individual to cut a check of 5 crores. You may be okay that all of you pool together and then that AIF cuts a check of 5 crores because you don't want to take that kind of exposure at every individual level. So consolidation of assets is possible by having a family AIF. Decision making on the family investment pool also happening at a consolidated level is very easy to implement in a family AIF, because you just have to have an investment policy statement which any of the wealth advisors should be able to draft for you to decide on what is the debt, equity and alternate allocation, and accordingly your money gets invested. You will still have to be cautious about the tax implications of this AIF because it's not simple. There's Cat 1, Cat 2 and Cat 3 AIFs used for different purposes. And there are some tax nuances which one needs to be aware of. There are solutions possible, there are calls taken, there are council views taken. So you will have answers to every issue which comes up. But knowing all these, so for example, in an IPO, a retail investor invests, you will have a particular threshold above which you will not get an allocation. Through an AIF, you get a status of a qualified institutional buyer, and a QIB status allows you to kind of get a higher allocation. You can, using an AIF, send 25% of the AUM or the value of AIF is say 100 crores, 25% can go outside India for investments. So some of these things, while there are restrictions, like if there's money lying in liquid, it can only be invested into a mutual fund for managing the liquidity. You cannot invest into mutual funds using an AIF route. So your aim is to only do mutual fund investments, then AIF is not the right structure. So there are a lot of these things which will have to be kept in mind before choosing which entity you want to choose as an investment entity. But families are looking at AIF structures for pooling in, getting the QIB status, being able to send money offshore minus the LRS, and also with the accredited investor concept coming in from a, sorry, I'm using jargons.
AIF doesn't follow the LRS norms?
No, no.
And AIF is available for non-family members also?
Yes, it's not like FEBI has defined that only family members can come in.
It's a pooler.
It's a pooling vehicle.
Okay, I mean, people who want to do it can get to it.
Yes.
There's no cap.
There's no cap, there's a minimum contribution. You can't put less than 1 crore over a call-in period. So,
And then if you get yourself as registered as an accredited investor with SEBI has put, you can do 25 lakhs. So it's changing environments, changing regulations, but there are no restrictions like the LRS because LRS is only for individuals, not for entities.
so with that,
Actually, I want to add
Sorry,
something.
me too, actually.
Sorry,
Yeah.
please.
So just to add to this, while AIF is an amazing route, the way in which SEBI has drafted regulation, particularly for the utilization of 25%, which is going outside India, since you asked about LRS, it's not you will be able to do portfolio investment with that 25%. Okay, so there are restrictions which have been put in terms of what that 25% can be used for. So typically, the rule is quite, I find it very strange, honestly. The rule says that use 25%, send money abroad, invest into the companies which have operations back home in India.
Which have a
So-
link
so
to
take
India.
Which has
Back
a link
office
to
in
India.
India.
Which has a link
to India.
Link to India.
It's a very
Right? So, if you assume that you are going to...
Yes, in a way, yes.
Correct. But then if you are looking linked to India, now the regulator can take their own view on that, right? Not regulator, but then you have to take a view. Like say, for example, if I want to buy Nestle by using the AIF, can I say Nestle has a link to India? I mean, it is in the form of probably distributorship or the product available, but what regulator is looking at, and why I'm bringing it up is because I have seen that in some of the cases, SEBI's intention was to allow this 25% to be taken outside to promote startup and the whole setup around private equity. Okay, they never anticipated that this provision will be used to actually do portfolio management. So there are certain views which are taken by SEBI and some of these AIFs. So one has to be careful. I'm not saying it's not available, but one has to be careful in terms of where that 25% is getting invested. Right, like ETFs, normal bonds, mutual funds, structured products, they are not available for you when you take this 25%.
Can you take through AIF and then after your LRS limit, put that in your portfolio?
You can do it separately because you don't
You have
need
to connect it.
Yeah, you can double it. And it's very interesting. You can do multiple things. I think we can
Combination of multiple sets of things.
And if we talk through all of them, I think we'll be talking to an empty room.
Actually, one thing I wanted to add, as the families become bigger, and they want to write larger checks. When you're writing a Series B, Series C, Series D, that's where we are specializing in. the demand today is anywhere between $5 to $10 million, and that's the minimum check large startups are taking. You know, for somebody to write, $10 million is a lot of money to be written. But that's when when they pool assets, they put into a fund, and then the fund starts deploying it, or they have global vehicles to start deploying money. It's way easier if you have money outside, and it's very easy to deploy it. But again, in the AIF thing, money coming back, it's a textbook round-tripping case, because we have to be very careful about it. So we have a team which keeps looking at this and, come back and say, well, this is not possible.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for this. So this session, I thought I heard the first two sessions, the whole succession planning, and I've worked with multiple families where they're saying we are actually custodians for the next generation. We have to do as well as we can. And today's times, the family office sourcing newer opportunities and not really with blinkers on, look at the business that was run by my forefathers. Am I doing that same thing better and better? Sometimes the context changes, right? You can't blame the third generation. The context has changed of the business. So therefore, to be the best custodian, do you need to look in a broader way, look at, rely upon family offices to source opportunities, to give opportunities for the next gen to sort of start newer business. If you're in real estate, can my children do biotech? Why not? Can you get the right people around you? So I think with that, and the multiple opportunities, right? The family office and the opportunities that there are in India and all the things that are happening. I've worked for so many years in Bangalore. It was the hub. The recent statistics showed Delhi is bigger than Bangalore. Bombay is catching up. Of late, I have friends of mine who are now working out a Guwahati startup. I said, how do you manage Guwahati? Will your family ever move there? But it's everywhere. Now, can we invest? Can people get there? Anyway, that's a different story. So with that, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to all the families.
There's a question.
Sorry.
I'm saying, suppose you have 100 rupees. Okay. What should be the ideal conservative or an aggressive allocation in terms of shares, debt, mutual fund, startups, unlisted shares, fixed deposits or something like that? Is there any matrix by which somebody can decide?
See, I think that's best left to a wealth manager, but I've heard this said many times, the age profile, the risk profile, and the percentages and how you continue maintain. If, I would let Sonali.
And will you give it free?
This, yeah.
That's why I said conservative and aggressive. That's,
Yeah,
larger.
so what we call as moderately aggressive, that's the term that we use.
Okay.
So earlier when we started this whole asset allocation, it was very simple, debt and equity, right?
Yes, yes.
And typically for a profile like this, I would say 60-40 was something that was taken.
Correct.
Then came private equity, right? Then came real estate, then came certain AIFs and other alternatives, right? So that's where now the new shift, of course, as Chandy said, it depends on age, profile, liquidity and all of that. But as a ballpark number, if I have to look at, so equity is usually around 40 to 50%. So the component of private equity has gone from the equity. Debt still remains what it is, right? But the equity portion of 70% is now divided between equity, private equity and certain alternatives, So that is what on a broader side I have seen as a practice. But yeah, there are various nuances and elements which are involved in choosing the actual asset allocation.
Okay, thank you.
I think Pranav is going to take a session only on family trust.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it to that, Pranav.
Yeah, I think Pranav is the acclaimed master of that. So
I don't want to take away
there
his
is
session.
there is no prescription. It's a living document, and how you write it, what you want. That family constitution we spoke about, how do you implement it through the trust? I think Sir will take us through it. Yeah.
It's not a topic which will get over in a 2-minute answer. So it's best that you hear it in a...
Actually, a suggestion. We should talk afterwards. Yeah, sure.
but do feel free to ask questions and slow me down if you think that's required. So very quickly, talking of family businesses, just the size and scale of what family businesses today are. Globally today, just the top 500 family businesses have generated $7.28 trillion in revenue in 2021 alone. That's the kind of size and scale we are talking of in terms of the constituency, how large family businesses are. Out of these 500, top 500, 17, as many as 17, come from India, who have generated combined revenues of $277 billion in 2021. In India alone, almost 80% of the businesses are family businesses. And the ultra high net worth individuals constitute in India have grown to 13,000 plus in 2021 from 12,000, growing at a rate of 11% year-on-year basis. The number of ultra high net worth individuals population in India is expected to go up by almost 40% over the next 3-4 years by 2026. And when it comes to forerunners in the billionaires club, Asia accounts for as much as 38% actually of the total billionaires of the world. That 36 ought to be 38 to be precise. If we look at family businesses, I think Dr. Vatsra spoke about it, and so also some others. Only 30% of the family businesses make it to the second generation. Only 12% make it to the third, and beyond the third, virtually non-existent. Why does this happen? On the one hand, family businesses are meant to be driven by longevity. They are far more interested in taking long-term views, but still there are very, very few family businesses that survive beyond the third generation. And that's because of a variety of reasons. One of them being succession intentions itself is not there. There's not enough support from the family. The conflicts in the family hurt it, and so on and so forth. Very quickly, sustaining family businesses involve a whole host of things that one needs to do. One, of course, I firmly believe that perpetuating family values is one critical element. It's one thing to say that I want to preserve my wealth, my businesses, and so on, but perpetuating the family values, the legacy, is what really helps preserving the wealth and businesses of the family and sustaining and growing family businesses. Second, we spoke of, I think Dr. Vatsra spoke about the governance framework. Third, I would feel ensuring that continuously entrepreneurial thinking is promoted amongst family businesses is key. So how does one renew and sustain the entrepreneurial thinking and feel, allowing the next generation to take their calls, make their mistakes, learn from mistakes, allowing them their space to get into newer businesses is what I think is critical. Empowering them, giving them the mantle at the right time is what really helps sustaining and growing family businesses. The flexibility and freedom that we are talking about. One of the key things that I think ensures family businesses survive and sustain is transparency and communication. Ensuring that there is a communication ethos where the family members, including the next generation and various genders, talk freely and frankly. Candid communication is what really ensures that the families stay together and can keep growing in terms of their businesses. Professionalism and family offices we just spoke about, and philanthropy we feel is one key thing which really helps a family express its family values. When we talk of family businesses in India, some of the characteristics that we see is typically there are very complex and multi-tiered cross-holding structures. Multiple operating entities, different entities, it's not one entity, but multiple operating entities historically have evolved. Personal assets and business assets are all mixed together, sometimes in the same structure. while the businesses may be having a lot of money and wealth, liquidity in the hands of the promoters is typically a challenge, moving money upstream from the businesses into the hands of the promoters. Sometimes you see extended joint families with diverse family members running various different businesses. And the promoter shareholders spread amongst various individuals, relatives, and promoter-held companies. These are some of the typical characteristics that we see in India in particular in terms of family businesses. When we talk of succession planning, the key drivers as we see are, one, the most important factor typically is to balance and align, the economic interest and management control. We spoke earlier also in terms of the women in business panel discussion, that the whole idea is how does one align economic interest and management control. And it's possible to ensure that certain members of the family, certain successors are given economic interest while not being given management control, whereas others are given management control alone. The diversity between, the differentiation between handing over economic interest to many more, but control and management to fewer individuals in the family is something that should be clearly understood and is possible to achieve through various structures, some of which we will even go into. There has to be a clear preemption of family conflict, which is critical to ensure when one is planning for succession. Again, streamlining shareholding in terms of the economic interest and voting rights, the aspect of control versus economic interest that we spoke about, and ensuring that both the economic interest and control pass to successive generations in the desired manner at the right time is what is critical in terms of the succession planning exercise. Segregating the business assets and non-business assets is also one factor that one must bear in mind and plan for well in advance, because business assets one may want to pass on in a certain way, whereas non-business assets might be planned to be given to successive generations in a slightly different manner and at different points in time. And therefore, segregating the two might be one important factor that one needs to bear in mind. Demarcation of the wealth and the same and ensuring that the same is given in a manner that provides flexibility, exit flexibility to each branch of the family is critical. So if some branch of the family, one particular sibling wants to separate, exit, what would be the rules, processes governing those is something that one must plan in advance when one is planning for the succession to the next generation. Ensuring that the control of each business, each asset is at the right time handed over is again an important factor. One of the things that becomes extremely relevant is how does one ensure some minimum recurring cash flows moving to each member of the family and to each branch is what is extremely important to ensure that the lifestyle, the requirements, maybe medical, educational and other requirements of each individual in the family is adequately met is something that the structure must enable in order to ensure that it is an efficient structure. Flexibility to deploy funds generated in the business. So if there is surplus funds generated in the business, where should those be deployed in terms of growing which area of the business? Where should those resources which are scarce going to be used for growing which particular activity or business is something that is relevant. One other relevant factor is, although currently we do not have estate duty in India, the expectation is that it's a matter of time before which it is introduced, and therefore ensuring that estate duty or inheritance tax, if it is reintroduced, does not deplete the family wealth to a significant extent is something that one needs to plan for. And in certain communities, there can be forced heirship rules. How does one plan to ensure that those do not impact the ability of successors getting wealth in the desired manner is something that one should bear in mind. So typically we feel group restructuring and succession planning pretty much go hand in hand, and eliminating some of the cross holdings, creating sector specific holding vehicles and so on are extremely important to ensure that the succession planning is done in a more efficient manner with the right structure in place. Typically when one talks of succession planning, we look at various different aspects. One is of course tax. If there are listed entities in the group, SEBI regulations become extremely relevant. Competition regulations become relevant. The corporate law, if there are corporate entities in the group, corporate law and what it can enable, how efficiently it can be managed becomes a relevant factor. Stamp duties, especially when there are immovable properties, becomes a critical factor. If there are any promoter holding companies, investment companies, which are typically NBFCs or CICs, those regulations of the RBI become relevant. If there are any assets abroad or some of the family members are non-residents or residing abroad, typically we see in today's families children residing abroad and so on, then the foreign exchange management regulations become extremely relevant. Relevant succession laws, whether it be Hindu Succession Act, Muslim law, or Indian Succession Act applicable to Christians, etc., also become extremely relevant. And in many cases, intangibles of the family like intellectual properties, brands, patents and so on, and how they can be planned for become extremely relevant while doing a succession planning exercise. In many cases, the name of the family might be one. If there are 3 siblings, 4 siblings, how would that ultimately be owned, operated and shared become extremely relevant in terms of succession planning exercise. Typically, the elements that we use to ensure that the right structure is achieved or the right objectives are met are twofold. One is the pillar of structures, the kind of entities and the ownership pattern of the various entities, whether it is holding companies, partnership firms, LLPs, HUFs, typically trust structures, which we will go into greater detail on and so on and so forth. And the other is the agreements or arrangements that are put in place in terms of the documentation. These are the 2 aspects that are critical in the succession planning and the most important pillars. Someone did raise the question, I think Rakesh ji, on trust structures. Typically, in a trust structure, there is a settlor who settles properties or moves properties in the trust. A trustee who is really managing the property of the trust. And of course, the trust property is settled by the settlor who gifts the property into the trust. And the third are the beneficiaries who really are the beneficial owners having the economic interest in respect of the property that is housed in the trust. So there are, in a typical transfer, there are 2 parties, the transferor and the transferee, seller and the purchaser, donor and the person who receives the gift, which is the donee. And in the case of a trust, there are 3 parties to the transaction. The settlor, who is the transferor, the trustee to whom the legal title to the property is transferred is the transferee in some sense. But the beneficial interest in the property that the trustee legally owns belongs to a third category of persons who is called the beneficiary or beneficiaries. So the settlor hands over or transfers the property to the trustee as the transferee, but for the benefit of the trustee merely holds it in a fiduciary capacity for the benefit of someone else who is the beneficiary. So for example, if an individual, say father, settles some property in trust, keeping the mother as the trustee with the children as the beneficiary, or keeping his friend or brother as a trustee and his children who are too small today as beneficiaries, the trustee has only to function in a fiduciary capacity and is only holding and managing the properties for the benefit of someone else. And that's why we call a trust is generally a tripartite arrangement, where the beneficiaries are the true economic owners, but the control, voting rights, right to take decisions, all of that stays with the trustee. typically we see a trust also in a public charitable context where for philanthropic purposes a trust is created. In those trusts, the beneficiaries are people at large or needy or public, so to say. But what we are going to probably discuss today a little more is a private trust or a family trust, where typically the beneficiaries are private individuals, family members, relatives, and so on. A private trust in turn can be of two types, an irrevocable trust or a revocable trust. In most cases, a revocable trust would permit the settlor who has settled the property in trust to, in some form or shape, resume power or get back control over the property or get back the benefits over the property. That is what is called as a revocable trust, where the settlor, when he is transferring, keeps some powers, right, authority to take back control and benefits over the property. An irrevocable trust, on the other hand, is a trust where the settlor has no rights to take back the property, and the property is irrevocably and forever divested by the settlor. Again, a trust could be a specific trust or a discretionary trust. A specific trust is one where the shares of the beneficiaries in the trust are predefined and definite. Each beneficiary, so if there are 3 beneficiaries, a son and 2 daughters, for example, the share of each of them, if they are predefined, 33% each, for example, then that is a fixed and determinate or a specific trust, where the income goes in a particular proportion to the defined beneficiaries, identified beneficiaries. Similarly, when the corpus is to be distributed, the principal, that also goes to beneficiaries in a specific proportion. A discretionary trust, on the other hand, is one where the trustee does not have to give away the income or the corpus in a specific ratio, but the trustee has the discretion to distribute the income of the trust amongst the beneficiaries in whatever proportion is found appropriate by the trustee at his discretion. And similarly, the corpus could be distributed amongst the beneficiaries at the discretion of the trustee in whatever proportion he deems appropriate. That is what we typically call a discretionary trust. Normally, a discretionary trust is considerably more advantageous from various perspectives, especially tax and estate duty and inheritance tax planning. So we are seeing a lot of discretionary trust today amongst families, promoter families in particular. A will versus trust is a typical debate that goes on. When one divests properties through or under a will, the property moves, sorry, I don't know what happened, okay. When one divests property through a will, typically the property passes to the successor, the next generation, only upon the death of the concerned individual. And therefore, no property passes today. In the case of a will, property passes only on the death of the individual. And I can make any number of changes, revoke a will, and so on and so forth before my death. So I can make any number of changes. On the trust front, however, I may have to divest property today itself, and it passes on to someone else, the trustee, for the benefit of a third person, today itself. There are various advantages of that versus, of course, disadvantages. One is property is divested today, but the other is also that a will can be far more challengeable, and therefore the uncertainty as to whether that will be honored and so on is much, much greater. A trust, on the other hand, having been created today with the person who has divested the property very much being there, any challenge is far more difficult because he is there to answer any questions, whereas a will comes into effect only after death. So if there is any challenge to a will, it could get into substantial litigation, and the persons to whom you want to transfer the property may find it extremely difficult to really get hold of it. Similarly, in the case of forced heirship rules, it becomes extremely difficult to transfer property under a will in a certain way. And therefore, creation of a trust can really help in terms of ensuring that the right successors get the beneficial economic interest and control management rights at the right time. There could be situations where the property could be subject to a lot of dispute even otherwise through claims of creditors, lenders, matrimonial disputes and so on. Putting property in a trust ring fences or protects the beneficiary's interests in the property, even if there is some kind of a dispute. So if, for example, the property has gone to an individual and there was a matrimonial dispute or a claim of a creditor or a lender, the property could be attached, it could go away, taken away. Whereas if the property is in a trust where an individual is only a beneficiary, the property is ring fenced against any such claims, liabilities, disputes and so on. And therefore that could become a large advantage. So while there are a whole host of advantages of a trust structure, some of them are obvious. The benefits from an estate duty or inheritance tax perspective, ring fencing against potential claims, liabilities, and so on and so forth. A typical trust structure, for example, where there are multiple successors, could be where the property of the family is put into a trust, which could be a fixed and determinate trust where the relevant percentages are in turn defined, and there could be trusts for the benefit of each branch of the family. Branch 1 being beneficiaries of a particular discretionary trust, branch 2 being the beneficiaries of another discretionary trust, maybe a trust 2, and trust 3 being a fixed and determinate or a specific trust, which owns all the properties of the family, and the respective branches get specified interests, but the individuals within that branch are discretionary beneficiaries of the relevant branch's dedicated trust. So this is, for example, one way of creating a trust structure, and within that trust structure there could be various different assets, business assets, personal assets, LLPs, partnership firms, property companies, intangibles, family brands, patents, and so on and so forth. So there could be different types of properties owned by the trust, which in turn has specified beneficiaries, specific percentages for each branch, and within each branch there could be a discretion. This is just an example of how a trust structure can be created. Not that the entire family wealth needs necessarily to be put into the trust structure forthwith. One could put in place the trust structure, populate the trust by certain wealth of the family, maybe 10%, 20% to start with, and then populate it by a greater portion of the family wealth as one gets more comfortable with the trust structure, or the balance can be moved even through a will. So it's not an either or. Part of the property can be populated into the trust by creating the structure today. It could go on being enhanced, augmented, populated to a larger extent over a period of time, or the balance could be given away on death through a will as well. Under the will, once you have the trust structure, the balance property can be through the trust, through the will, handed over to the trust even upon demise of that individual. So one could name the trust as the beneficiary in the will, and if I have already transferred 40% of my wealth into the trust, the balance 60% could be given away to trust 1, trust 2, trust 3 under my will, or to specific individuals under my will. So all kinds of different possibilities, permutations, combinations could definitely be worked upon. There are multiple case studies that I have taken here, but I think in the interest of time, what I would rather do is invite any questions. We are already way above our 6 o'clock deadline, and probably take it from there, if you think appropriate. Yeah, sorry. Please, happy to take any questions, and sure. Okay, we could do that. Yeah, please. It could be against everyone. Any any liability, any claimant will not be able to lay his or her hands on property which is in a trust, where I am only a beneficiary. So if there is a claim against me, whatever that claim may be, if I had wealth in my personal name, that entire wealth is on the block at risk, right? Any claimant, whether it is a tax authority, whether it is a creditor, lender, matrimonial dispute, any claim for damages, it could be any claim whatsoever. The claimant has his hands on my wealth if that particular wealth is mine. On the other hand, if I am only a beneficiary of a trust, especially if it is a discretionary trust of which I am a beneficiary, no claimant who has a claim against me can go ahead and attach my trust property on the ground that I want to recover my dues whatsoever. Not possible. Because I am only a beneficiary of the trust, and it is only when the trustee distributes that wealth to me, if and when he distributes that income or wealth to me, that it becomes mine, so that someone can probably attach it, make a claim against it, and so on and so forth. If you understand what I mean. Specific trust also, but it becomes a little more difficult, and therefore discretionary trust is very safe, we would feel. Sorry, I'll just complete this. Come, sorry.
So if you're the main trustee, then you are liable?
No, a trustee is never liable. So let's put it this way. If there is a liability that the trustee has,
no,
his personal wealth may be on the block, may be at risk. But the wealth which he is controlling only as a trustee is not at risk, because that is not his property. He is only functioning in a fiduciary capacity as a manager, as someone who has the ability to take decisions, to see how that wealth is managed, invested, divested, distributed to the beneficiary, but he has no interest in it. So as trustee, his personal wealth may be at risk, but the wealth which he is controlling in his capacity as a trustee is not at risk. The second is, if there is a liability which has come upon a beneficiary, again that beneficiary's personal wealth is at risk against a claimant, but not the property that is residing in a trust where he is a beneficiary, because he is one of the beneficiaries and he has no control. He is only a beneficiary, and that too depending on as and when income distribution is made to him or corpus distribution is made to him, he gets the property. So neither a claim against the beneficiary nor against the trustee puts the trust property at risk.
And the one who creates the trust, he's also...
He has, if it is an irrevocable trust, he has fully divested himself of the property, so it is no longer his property in any case.
And if it's a revocable, then...
Revocable, then there is some risk that the court may ask him to use his rights, because he has a right to revoke the property and then repay it. I must, however, say one thing, that if the creation of the trust is to defraud creditors, there is a risk. So for example, if my liability has already arisen or is about to arise, and I am trying to defraud my creditors by transferring something to the trust just before someone makes a claim, that could be a problem. But if at the time when I create the trust, I have a positive net worth, right, then there is no problem. But there have been instances, for example, where a person's net worth is already negative. Already his liabilities are far in excess of the assets, and then I try and move some assets into the trust before a bankruptcy claim is made against me. That could run into a problem. But if today my assets are 100, my liabilities are 40, and I create a trust for 30, 35, 40, that's not a problem. But if my liabilities already exceed my assets, and typically it's a 2-year window. So if within the 2-year window a trust has been created to defraud creditors, that's a problem. But otherwise, I have created the trust, later on something goes wrong, some dispute happens, some liability comes up, then it's safe. Sorry, you had a question.
I just wanted to ask, in case of a dispute between legatees, which document or which, whether the trust overrides the will or the will overrides the trust?
Both operate in different spheres. A trust has property which is already transferred to it during the lifetime of an individual. That property which he has already transferred during his lifetime belongs to the trust and will be governed by the trust deed, the trust documents. The property which he has not transferred during his lifetime, which is still with the individual concerned, passes on his death either as per his will, a valid will which he has left behind, or as per the rules of intestate succession applicable to him, right? So all property that I have already transferred during my lifetime to the trust, the will has no claim over that property. That property is gone to the trust and will be governed entirely by the trust deed.
So the shares may be different in both the cases?
Oh yes, even of the same company. If I have a company, let us say ABC Private Limited, 30% of the shares I have already transferred during my lifetime to the trust. Those 30% shares will be governed by the trust deed. Balance 70% shares I had not gifted to anyone individually nor transferred to the trust. Those 70% shares will be governed by my will if I leave behind a valid will, otherwise rules of intestate succession. A trustee can also be a beneficiary, there is no bar, but typically a settlor cannot be a beneficiary, but trustee and beneficiary can be same, settlor can be trustee, trustee can be beneficiary, but settlor should not be beneficiary.
Then in case of trustee and beneficiary be the same, then that attachment liability arises from, if there is some claim.
If there is a claim and if a trustee is also the beneficiary, there will be a risk in regard to your ring fencing point. So that trustee who is also a beneficiary and he has all the powers plus the beneficial interest, it is very likely that his part of the property is likely to face a risk from a claim or a liability. Okay. Thank you so much. I think we have already overshot quite a bit. Appreciate your patient listening.
Thank you very much, Pranav. It's been a wonderful session this whole afternoon, which was actually curated by Pranav Sahita. I think thank you very, very much. And I brought him in because he has done my family structure the way he described. And so I'm fully aware of this. And so you can't find a better expert, honestly, than Pranav on this subject. Thank you very, very much.